Okay, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order this capital budget meeting of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores. Welcome all the council members and staff members and members of the public who are here this morning. We appreciate you being here. So the first item, or the second item, I should say, is disclosures of pecuniary interest and nature thereof. And I'll ask any member if they have any pecuniary interest they'd like to declare at this moment. See any? Of course, you can declare one anytime if you need to. That moves us on to item 3, which is the overview, and we'll begin with comments from the CAO.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm delighted to be here this morning with the rest of the staff team as part of our annual budget process. Today's part 2 and is focused around our capital budget. Following today, staff will take today's feedback and direction and combine it with the feedback that we received via the operating budget process and prepare a final recommendation for Council's approval. Prior to that, we will answer all of the questions that we received during the operating budget process and today, so that you'll have all of the information that you require and have asked for to make informed decisions. Capital budget involves mostly one-off projects that fit into the larger plan of infrastructure support and growth that meets our community needs. Staff appreciate the questions we've received to date and look forward to those received today. The proposed budget, with the exception of some of the additional items, generally fits within the proposed blended tax levy that we spoke about as part of the operating budget. We provided members of council and the public via our posted agenda an easy-to-read package with photographs and maps and bullet points. And today we don't intend to speak to every project, but you will have an opportunity to stop the presentation as it goes and ask questions if you have questions about a specific project. One of the consistent questions we hear is are the projects achievable? Is the list achievable? And what about projects that we're carrying forward? And I just wanted to answer some of those questions and feel free to ask those to the specific department heads. So if you look at the project list in the proposed budget, we've taken a couple of strategies to make sure that our list is achievable. We've bundled the number of projects. So as an example, if you look at in community services and in part in infrastructure and development, there's a series of roofing projects. So there might be 5 or 6 roofing projects, but they'll be bundled together for efficiency and contract administration, and could almost count as one project. We've also taken the approach in some projects to, and we started this last year, is to split them over 2 years, with the design in 1 year and construction in the second year. And one of the challenges we've had historically, and why we're doing this, is if you think about a road project, it gets approved in around now, and staff have to design it, they have to do community consultation, they have to tender it, and they have to construct it in a few short months. And that puts lots of pressure on contractors and staff and our citizens. So if you design it in 1 year, you can do your consultation, you can get a better budget in place for the next year, and then next year you're starting early with an approved budget and an approved design. So that makes things much more smooth. The other thing is a number of projects are county projects, and it's our financial contribution to it, but the projects are led by the county, so it's not as onerous contract administration for staff. So I'm confident, and the department heads have assured me that the project list is achievable, recognizing that in fact some projects are designed to go over multiple years. One of the big bridge projects, I believe, is a 4-year plan. So it's not that all of these will be done in the year. Through design, some of them will take more than 1 year. Finally, staff are committed to providing council with work in progress reports. So these are WIPs, and we plan on supplying them or providing them to council 2 or 3 times a year on all of our capital budgets to provide council and the community regular status updates of where we're at project-wise. And as I've invited members of council, if you have ideas about what you would like to see in those WIPs, those work in progress reports, please let me know. And as we build the template for that, we'll make sure that we include those. Finally, I'd like to thank staff for all of the hard work that they've done. They've been working hard both on operating and capital, and council for your continuing support. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll turn it over to the Director of Corporate Services for the overview presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Charbonneau, and through you. So I'm just going to briefly go through a few quick overview slides before we get into the projects by department. So this capital budget is management's best advice on projects required in 2019 to maintain infrastructure and meet goals. The 2019 capital discussion will focus on our 2019 projects. Where available, we have included a five-year summary from 2019 to 2023. And based on the original assumptions presented to you in our operating budget and what we've anticipated in this capital budget, it still keeps us within that 3% blended rate, which was discussed during our operating. And there have been no additional council requests included in that number, and if we have any discussions today, any additions will affect that 3%. And there is a brief 5-year capital forecast. I'm not going to go into great detail. You do have it in front of you, in front of your package. And then we also have, this is the 5-year summary that we have, which has a brief snapshot of our capital overview projects by division and how those projects will be funded. Does anyone have any questions yet, or?
Vice Deputy Mayor.
So I meant to send this question in just before we get started into the process. I was wondering about on the summary sheet on page 10, the taxation amount for capital, $1,543,000. I should have asked you this before. Could maybe before the morning's out, I'm just wondering what that number was to start last year, like what we have increased our taxation amount for capital projects from the 1.543, what that might have been last year. If you don't have it right now,
Last year, our tax funded amount was $1,532,447. So we've increased the tax funded portion just.
That'd be 1,532,447.
447.
477.
And that's an increase of 10,653.
10,600. Okay, thank you. And just a comment to the CEO. I appreciate your comment, David, about the number of projects. I mean, there's 16 road projects this year. We had this discussion last year at council about the number of carry forward projects and concerned that there wasn't enough staff time, resource to get things done, and a lot of carry forwards this year. So, and then we're loading another 15, 16 roads and a lot of other projects. But I'm glad to hear your comments because you're confident, and staff are saying that it's achievable. So I just wonder if we're just loading too much on the staff with the number of projects happening. But you've given us confirmation that things will be good. So those are my two questions just to start.
Yeah, just to follow up on your first comment about the taxation contributions to capital, effectively in real terms, this is basically hold the line. It's almost a negligible increase to the taxation supported or taxation support of capital projects, and that I think is something council should bear in mind as we work our way through the capital budget. Remembering that all the time our capital assets are depreciating. The rate of depreciation is, I don't know, I can't remember right off the top of my head what the rate of depreciation is, but we are experiencing depreciation. And one thing I've been thinking about is whether or not we should, it has often been the practice of council to increase taxation support of capital projects at a rate of 1.5% or 2% year over year in order to attempt to offset the effects of depreciation and to reflect that in the tax rate. So anyway, I just wanted to bear that in mind or make that statement that it is a hold the line at the moment. Are there any other comments before Sue moves on? Doesn't look like it. Carry on, Sue.
My microphone back on. You also have in your package a estimated reserve balance for 2019-18, but please bear in mind we have not finalized our 2018 year end as payables are still coming in. So we will be bringing back a report to council with our recommendations for 2018, because you will see some reserves are in a negative balance. So as we finalize the 18 year, we'll keep that in mind as we do our 2018 year-end transfers. So there's about a few pages. And then you also, in your package, have a memo from me sort of about our borrowing capacity and our annual payment limit. So this is just sort of to give you an idea of, as we discuss capital projects and future funding, whether or not projects need to be debt financed. It shows us sort of how much the town can fund through debt.
Excuse me, I just want to comment on that. If you could flip back a slide. So this is something that came up with in operating when I made my opening comments. I did say to council that there's tons, I think is the word, but that's probably not the right descriptor. There's many good ideas, and there's lots of great ideas. And council will need to make choices when we look at the significant projects that our community desire. There is a capacity of debt. So the decision points, there aren't any presented today of those significant projects, except potentially the Lamont pit. But as we move forward, we funded the police building. We're going to be funding the Lamont outdoor sports facility. There's a potential for a YMCA in town. People have asked for a renovation of the Southampton Town Hall. There's a number of significant projects that we should make, and council should bear that in mind. Generally, first past the post isn't a good strategy, and we'll be working with council throughout 2019 to help you come up with those priorities.
Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Sue, this is, I think, a question that I sent to you, but I thought it might be helpful to the public, if anybody's watching this or listening, about the percentage of our net debt charges. If you could talk about that in terms of where we are and what best practice is. Thanks.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Cheryl had previously sent me a question sort of asking what our debt service was, which is the amount of principal and interest that a municipality pays each year to service the debt. So you basically are taking your principal and interest payments over your own sourced revenue. And our current percentage is 5.4%. The BMA study, which I mentioned in the operating budget, also has this calculation. So the average amongst the 108 municipalities is 5.1%. And so we're pretty much right in the middle there. And the BMA study also indicates that credit rating agencies consider that principal, debt, and interest should be below 10% of own source revenue. So we're well below the sort of 10%. And that would take us through the overview and onto the individual divisions.
All right, thank you very much, Sue. So I guess I'll just ask just one more time in case anybody's thinking of anything. Is there any questions on items 3.1 through 3.4 there? Lingering for anyone or comments? I don't see any. So we can move on then to item 4 and the beginning of the department by department presentations. And we'll start this time with community services. So I'll turn it over to the Director of Community Services.
Okay, I think we're there now. Good morning. Yes, certainly you have the package given to you, and I think it's pretty detailed, and I'm not going to go through each one question by question, but I certainly wanted to start off by, first of all, thanking staff who have been part of this presentation. and they've been a tremendous amount of help. I think they're all behind me right now. I can't see, but and Mr. Steve Galley too, who is not here. He's out on the sites. He's been a huge help throughout this process. I also want to thank council who have diligently sent lots of questions to us. So we thank you for that. And I know there was a flurry of emails yesterday, so hopefully we didn't miss any questions and we were able to answer all of them for you. Our first area that we're going to discuss today is parks, and certainly it's our biggest area. And certainly one area of community services we know that our visitors and residents are passionate about and utilize the services within that area. In 2019, we're certainly looking at some efficiencies in the way we do our work and with the garbage collection that you've got the presentation there. We're looking at enhancing our passive parks with some planning, and we really would like to see a similar product like Southampton has as far as an accessible playground, and have a similar flagship park here in Port Elgin as well. We want to increase the experiences that our trail users have with interpretive signage along our trails. And certainly the outdoor sports complex is in your agenda as well, and that's a huge project for community services in 2019. It's an imperative that we don't miss a beat throughout this process with our planning process, with our consultation, and with the fundraising campaign. So you'll see that in parks as well for 2019.
Okay, so what we'll do, we have the list of projects, also the capital forecast and the summary there. I guess what I'll do is I'll just go through right from the beginning and just ask members if they have comments on these things, and if you do, we'll take them, and if not, we'll move on. So we'll start with the parks forecast, the capital forecast for the next 5 years of their comments. Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. As we go through this, I see there's a $1.65 million for the outdoor sports ball diamonds, which of course is a very exciting proposition, and we all look forward to seeing that Lamont project get off the ground. But as we bring those 4 baseball diamonds online, I think it was expected that some of the other ball diamonds that are currently in use would become redundant and turned back into some other use. Lakeview Park comes to mind, and perhaps Pearson Park. Is there any factoring in this package that includes additional revenue streams, either through more campsites or selling of property to finance some of this project?
Yeah, the page before that we've identified as the outdoor sports complex consultation and working drawings, that will play into effect for all of that. That's when I talk about planning. We need to take a look at our existing ball fields as well, and which ones are foreseeable in the future and which ones aren't, which ones are neighborhood playgrounds. So through this consultation process, we'll have a decision-making process for that as well.
We haven't got to the point where we've put an estimated dollar figure of recoupable funds?
No, that has not been determined as of yet.
Well, let's focus on the capital forecast. Are there any questions on that before I move on to the summary? Anything on that? I'll just skip over the summary, frankly, because we'll go item by item here. So let's move into the proposed capital projects and look at item 1, sign replacement. Any questions with regard to the sign replacement project? See any? Let's move on then to playground equipment replacement. Questions or comments on item 2, the playground equipment replacement? The Vice Deputy Mayor.
See you to Jane. Jane, what's the 20,000? What would be the scope of work? What would be included in that 20,000? What are we going to see at the end?
A majority of that will be used through consultation services. What we want to do, we know that we've got several parks that are past their longevity. Historically, we would do 15 to 20 years replacements, and we know we've got several parks that are past the 20 years. Nottowell Park has been deferred for a number of years. So part of that $20,000 is going to do some of that consultation. It will also leverage the fundraising campaign so that we have the materials in order to proceed with a fundraising campaign in the community. But through that process and identifying where we should be located, where is the best spot to consider for an accessible playground in Port Elgin.
There was a playground inventory report done quite a fair number of years ago, and you probably had your hands on it in the last, have you seen it from, it was way back.
It was, and it was also updated as part of the Recreation Master Plan in 2016.
Right, so I guess my question is about the 20,000. Do you not think we have the expertise on staff between yourself and our very capable parks manager to make the determination whether a playground is outdated or not, that we could simply, prioritize that list to say, here are the playgrounds that need to be replaced over the next 5 years, let's do them? Is it absolutely necessary we need to spend $20,000 to determine which playgrounds need to be removed and replaced? We've got good expertise on staff.
Yeah, absolutely, and I don't disagree with you. In some cases, we need funding to leverage additional funding through grants and organizations, but if it's council's wish not to proceed with this and to do it all in-house, we certainly can do that.
It was just a comment, Jane. I think you've got some very good people, and I'm looking at Frank back there. There's good expertise, and I'm just wondering how complicated. But at the end of the day, I'd like to come back to that item.
Yes, certainly have an opportunity to revisit them at the end. So we have some questions over here. I'll start with Councillor Rich and then come to Councillor Schreider.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm noticing on the list that it talks about Noddle Park, Pearson Park, and Davy Park. Are those the parks that we're limiting it to? I look at the playground, for example, in North Shore Park, and I'm wondering if that's all part of consideration. If we do it, Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt was saying, then maybe we'd look at all of our parks, but is that the only parks you're looking at as possibilities?
Sorry, no, not necessarily, but those are the three that are probably have the oldest pieces of equipment in them at this point.
Schreider?
Thank you, through you. I kind of echo Vice Deputy Mayor's comments with regards to having staff to be able to do this. We inspect them monthly as it is. We have, I think, 2, maybe more now, certified playground inspectors that are more than competent in order to determine the condition of these playgrounds. And we have, CSSA standards, or CSA standards, I think that would help them do that as well. If it's just a site assessment for a new, I guess that's a question then too, is that the 3 that you're looking at, is it a site assessment for an accessible playground, or is it the site assessment of the existing structures?
It's not just the site assessment, but it's the community consultation that we were seeking out an expert to come in and assist us through that process based on the workload that we have for 2019. So specifically, that's what we were looking at, and certainly we can attempt to do that in-house as well.
It's important to bear in mind, the CAO made the comments at the beginning about how this capital budget has been calibrated to make the workload work with the amount of available resources we have internally, and so we will have to just be cognizant of the fact that these changes, if we make them, may have some impact on the timelines of delivering some of these projects, but we can certainly revisit it toward the end. So are there any other comments on the playground section? If not, then we'll move on to in-ground waste containers. Any questions or comments with regard to that? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jane, I remember reading somewhere, and I can't see it I can't find it right now. Am I correct in having read that one of these containers would equal the capacity of about 14 conventional containers?
Yep, depending on the size of them, absolutely. They could hold 10 to 14 of our existing medium-size containers that we have.
Okay. So in that case, if eventually, once this gets rolling, there'll be fewer containers, and you have, I don't know, let's say in a given recreational area, big one, you've got one container where you would have normally maybe had 5 or 6. What's the feedback on people using that one container if they've got to walk,
Well,
3 times as long as they did before to access a garbage?
yeah, that's a good question, and certainly one that we've been discussing as well as we've been meeting with representatives in the market of in-ground garbage containers. Obviously, strategically placing them in areas where high traffic flows is desirable. It doesn't mean we're eliminating all of the garbage containers, but this certainly will complement some of the existing garbage containers where we see our heaviest usage. Right now, I'll use the Port Elgin main beach as an example. During prime time when we're at capacity at the main beach, our garbage crews going down there twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. It's not safe for our users, and it's certainly not safe for our staff members as well. So starting off on those areas where where we see the heaviest usage is a spot where we would like to begin, at least as a pilot, to see how it can effectively help our work days and make our staff, enable our staff to be in a more safer environment and our users.
The CAO has a comment.
Yeah, I just want to build on what Jane said. I've got experience using these type of containers, and the intent isn't typically to reduce the number of containers, it's to reduce the number of pickups. I've seen situations where we've gone from once a day to once a month pickups, so there's a great degree of efficiency in the design.
Also, Grace.
So I remember in the original plan that we received last year, or maybe through the year, there was an intent to have a placement at Denny's Dam. Is that still one of the targeted areas?
Yeah, that's certainly one that we receive a considerable number of phone calls, or we've received phone calls for Denny's Dam, and it's one of those spots that's out of sight, out of mind in some cases, and we know it's actively used by fishermen as well, so that certainly was on our agenda to consider having one installed down there.
Thank you.
We'll start with the Deputy Mayor and then head down the table.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Jane. Jane, so for these charges, how many are we looking at? How many in-ground containers are we looking at?
Oh, sorry. That's kind of an open-ended question because it really depends. We've got 3 companies that we're looking at, and each one brings different elements to it. So, and what I mean by that, it's whether they'll install, whether they'll pick up, whether we pick up. So depending on the different size, depending on the location, you can have small ones that are located on the rail trail for dogs. You can have larger ones at the beach. So we are going to go through a process, a tendering process, to see what we're able to get with that $30,000. And certainly we can report back to council on what that looks like.
We'd like to see the report. I remember Frank's presentation, as Councilor Gray said last year, and it was a good presentation, just wrong timing. We do have several places, but the equipment required to load and unload, we can handle that right now without having to purchase anything new?
Yes, certainly in the early years we can use it, we can do the removal of the garbage using our 1-ton and purchasing a winch for the back of it. Ideally, as we invest in this program and we have several years under our belt, we'd like to really consider more of a hydraulic lift that will make it easier for staff as well.
Okay. If this project gets approved, and I'm more for it this year, a couple places, as you said, the beaches are our main ones. If you look at Southampton Beach, the south side of the Jerry's Fries, that big parking lot there, it's always overflowing. How would you install a container like that in the parking lot area? Or because we have the fencing that goes down to the beach, we're kind of limited to where something like that can be put in, or is that not a problem because it's in ground and be installed out of sight right away?
Some of the conversations we've had with the suppliers to date, because it certainly was a concern with us, particularly in a waterfront setting. They've installed many of these in waterfront settings, so it obviously is possible. We'll rely on their expertise to help us through that process.
Okay, and are they porous? I'm just wondering because of the amount of water we could get. Are they porous for the water to drain out into the ground, or is that something that we're going to end up with having to drain the system? Again,
it depends which ones, which company we decide to go with as far as what the sleeves are like, whether they're concrete or you know, it's kind of difficult for me to answer that question because there's so many variables out there right now.
I appreciate that. So when you do get your report, I look forward to that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Councilor Rich?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. My only question was with regard to equipment as well. So I wouldn't mind seeing, because I think if we start into this, we're going to end up going down that road. I wouldn't mind seeing kind of a reasonable estimate of how much the specialized equipment would cost to be able to work it.
For the early years, the winch is quite reasonable. I think it was about $800 I had heard, or something very similar. But Certainly.
Okay, Councillor Smith.
Thank you. And through you, can you confirm whether these units are able to be winterized? Or is there any plan for this to be utilized during all 4 seasons?
We can decide whether or not we want to close them for the season, I'll say, for lack of a better word. Right now, we do leave garbage receptacles out in certain areas during the course of the winter. So again, for those heavy used areas, if those were areas that will have these receptacles in, then we'll keep them open during the winter. Particular areas like the dog park.
Anything further on the waste containers? Don't see anything, so why don't we move on then to the light standard and flagpole inspection? Any questions with regard to that item? Doesn't look like it, so we'll move then on to item 5, drinking fountain and water bottle filling station. Questions with regard to that item? I would just make the comment that it's good to note $18,000 of that is funded by donations, I suspect mostly from the Southampton Residents Association. I think that was am I wrong there? I think that was the group, or was it, who was it?
You're correct for one group, and the other group was the Southampton Rotary Club.
Oh, very good. So anyway, I just, right off the bat, just wanted to say thank you to both of those groups for raising those funds to make those possible. Those installations will be a great addition, and we certainly appreciate that funding. Is there anything further on that? Yeah, Councillor Schreier.
Thank you. Through you, I think just a general question, and we had emailed, and thank you, Jane, for your information this week on this. But some of the projects, or I guess some of the budget in this project involves staff time. Is that correct? Staff would be
Potentially
installing?
for installation?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So I guess maybe the question overall is that any projects that we're doing in-house, do these figures include staff time allocated towards these projects, or are they, or not?
This particular one does. It's very minimal, though, and the conversation we've had with staff to date with our lead hands is that because there's a desire to have these installed in the spring, we can't necessarily guarantee that we'll have the availability to do that. So the installators, or the individual groups that have purchased these, realize that we may be outsourcing this for installation. Spring's a very busy time for us. There is a desire by our staff to install them. However, we need to be realistic and work with our day-to-day activities in the spring as well for opening facilities.
So this budget may be staff installing, or it may be a
Correct.
contractor installing, and this
Correct.
budget would support both?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any further on the water filling stations? Don't see anything, so let's move then on to dog park improvements. Any questions or comments with regard to that? The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Just a comment and a thank you, Jane, Frank. I've had several requests from taxpayers, residents with dogs, looking for improvements at the dog park. So it's really good to see this item in the budget, and this is a thank you on behalf of all those dog owners. They'll feel good about these changes.
Further comments? What was the where did the dog park reserve come from? That was fundraised originally, and that's what's residual from that fundraising?
Correct, through a group of volunteers. So that was the, and that depletes that reserve at this point
Completely.
as well. Yeah.
Okay. So if there's nothing further, then we'll move on to consulting and drawings for outdoor sports complex. The Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, through you, I think this will go to our CAO first. It says provides an opportunity for input for key stakeholders. So before this begins, this is where we'll be calling in our key stakeholder groups to actually hear the revised edition of this.
Yes, absolutely. And Jane can speak more fully on that, but there is a plan to do lots of consultation and focus as much as we can on the Recreation Master Plan priorities.
Further questions? The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Jane, this is tremendous, and those 1,400 ball players in town are pretty excited about this development, as I am, and I'm sure a fair number of people around the council members around the table. One thing when we, $165,000 for consultant, landscape architect drawings, I'm sure that there'll be some terms of reference be sent out when you're looking for consultants to carry out this plan, and I just would like to have the opportunity as a member of council to see those terms of reference before they're sent out. I mean, that's a request I'd like to make. And the reason being, I just, there are some things in the terms of reference I certainly would like to see considered as part of this plan. And Councillor Matt mentioned one of them is surplus parklands, and I think that should be part of, hopefully, of 165,000. I know a lot of it will be for the design of the park, but Jane, just reconfirm again that as part of this community consultation process, there will be discussion around, for example, Beaner Park. What's the future? What does it hold for that park? Lakeview, Ball Diamond, Cameron Park. So just reconfirm with me that will be part of it.
Absolutely, that will be part of it. Obviously, we need to have the conversations how we're going to finance the an outdoor sports complex, but we also need to confirm our neighborhood parks and what do our future neighborhood parks look like as far as ball facilities. So there's lots of variables that will definitely be part of that.
It's going to be more than just the design of this field. It'll include, you know, how we could feed into that financially with surplus land.
Yes.
Part of it. And the other component will be fundraising. There are groups out there, you know, I think biting at the bit, so to speak, chomping at the bit to get going with the fundraising campaign. So will that be part of it as well? Because I really believe that, you know, to speed this process up even for phase 2, you know, it's not unreasonable to expect that we should go out into the community and ask our ball groups, our users, to take a look at a $500,000 fundraising campaign or a $1 million fundraising campaign, whatever the amount is. But there is interest out there amongst all users. What I'm hearing, I don't know what Councillor Smith and Strider are hearing, but I know speaking to people I'm close to in the ball circles, they're saying that they want to be involved. So that will also be part of the planning process, is to establish a community fundraising campaign.
Absolutely. Granted, that may be closer to the tail end once we have solidified what that looks like and what we're fundraising for. Because certainly, and I have it in the presentation that you've received, is a cost analysis is also part of cost analysis for the next spot, and that's the construction. So absolutely, that'll be part of it too.
So the two other questions I have, Mr. Mayor, if I might about this, because it's a fairly large project, and the terms of reference for the hiring of the consultant, when would you anticipate that coming back to council? Is it March? Is it April? Is it May? Is it June? And when would you see this, you know, once the terms of reference are completed, we hire the consultant, what's the timing around, how you would see the timing around when you'd see the ball complex drawings coming back to this council? Are you anticipating that this could be late fall, with construction starting this late fall or starting next spring? I'm talking a year from the spring.
Well, I didn't bring my glass ball with me today to look into, but certainly a lot of that's dependent on the consultant that we hire, and depending on who we hire, how they can fit us into their schedule. I'm leery about committing to specific dates right now. I think we're too early. Budget hasn't been approved yet. Once budget's approved, staff will obviously start on our process of going through the terms of reference. We've actually started that process now and moving on to the next step. So I'm very leery about tying myself down or tying ourselves down to dates at this point, but I think we're on the same wave here. We all want the conclusion to have an outdoor sports complex. So obviously we're going to work together with council. We're going to work together with the public. Yeah. This is a great project that really would benefit from an ad hoc committee. And we know we've got lots of people in the community that want to be part of that and will be part of a fundraising campaign.
Thank you, and I agree with you, Jane. It's a feel-good project, and you know, I think some of the groups are asking, is it 2022, is it 2023, and I guess time will tell. But I think originally for 2021, I'm not sure we're going to get there, but this is going to be worth the wait.
Well, and if I may add, we're all anxious to start the build, but this is the cautionary step where we need to make sure that we've crossed our T's and dotted our I's as we go through the planning process. Someone once told me, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So
I think that shut him up, man. I would on the near the last point you made there about the ad hoc committee, I think, and it should just be noted at this stage that the council, I think, will have, and one area where council can be involved early on here is in organizing itself to support the process through organizing a group of community members to assist with the project, including some members of this council. So I think, and some more stuff is going to come forward to council, hopefully in the near term, to talk about how we might do that. Yeah, I think we're going to have some opportunity to steer that community consultation, and we'll be talking about that soon. Is there any other questions? We're going to be, the next point is also, the next subject is also about the Ball Outdoor Sports Complex, Ball Diamonds at the Outdoor Sports Complex, the actual construction cost. So I'll move to that, and if there's any further questions on the whole project, any part of the project at this stage, the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One point that's been raised several times already today, great projects coming up, looking forward to the roofs, but we have several great projects going on in town, and I think we're going to have to be taking a very close look at our fundraising. We're going to have fundraising for a ball diamond, we're going to have fundraising for a park equipment, we're going to have fundraising for a pool. I think we're going to have to really try and monitor how we get these groups together, because you're going to rob Peter to pay for Paul, so it's going to be a very contentious issue and a big issue in town. Everybody wants, but it's just a matter of how we're going to slice that pie to get the amount of money that we require for all these projects.
That's a good point. Further, Councillor Grace?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a question, Jane, about the temporary washroom facilities will need to be included for 2020. So is that, are we talking about porta potties?
Porta potties are the portable units that they have that are available for rent.
Okay, and so this 1.65 million wouldn't be including later construction with the plumbing and infrastructure that would be necessary to build washrooms, complementary washrooms, or would be?
Infrastructure will be included.
Okay.
If in the 5-year capital forecast, you will see the phased-in approach that includes washroom facility, parking, and all of those amenities 2 years out, and then an additional construction of ball diamonds after that.
Rich?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So one of the questions I did see circulated by email was about whether this is like phase 1, or there was talk of 6 diamonds at one point. I don't know where that conversation ever ended up, but I didn't remember seeing an answer. So this is a proposal for 4. Is there an overall plan in place as to where we would like to go with this facility towards 6 diamonds or soccer fields, or what future phases may look like?
Yes, in the 5-year capital forecast, that's identified as a phased-in approach. So they're identified. Granted, those are predicted amounts, as is the 1.6, because the cost analysis is part of the phase prior to this. So they're all identified in the 5-year capital forecast.
Take the CAO and then Councillor Schreiber.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to build again on what Jane's saying. Is the design has not been done, so the 1.6 is an estimate of the cost. And we know that when we do lots of community consultation, needs increase and desires increase. So Jane has done some good research on the 1.6, but I would caution that until the design is done and approved by council, that's a ballpark figure, but I made that joke last night, so I shouldn't do it again.
Councillor Schreiber.
Thank you, through you. And obviously, I really support this project. I'm really glad to see it, and I think we do have local ball groups that are willing to support in any way that they can. I guess my request would be back to the consultation in the design period would be, Jane, could they possibly look at the way that we have it phased in, that approach, and 4 diamonds and 2 or 4 later on a few years down the road? But I think just from a costing perspective is could these consultants look at, if we built it all in one phase, what those cost savings would be versus doing it over 2 phases, and there might be potential cost savings where we might have to eat it a little bit in the beginning, but overall we'd have not hiring costs for construction again. So it's the total number of diamonds that we're looking at, 6 or 8, and I'm not sure what that answer is, but can we have them cost to build it in 1 phase versus 2?
certainly we can put in whatever we want in terms of reference, and hence the reason why we're not suggesting two, which the Recreation Master Plan suggested originally. Obviously, to deploy construction, to deploy the expertise we need, is far more effective to do four instead of two at once. So there potentially is a cost savings with that suggestion as well.
I think it's important to note that as we have that discussion about building it out in the future costs, if you look at the park's capital forecast over the next 5 years, it's the build out that's projected in there is $3.65 million, right? So that's why it comes back to the question that Councillor Mayette raised early on. Really, if you look at the cost to totally build that out, it's something that in the present circumstance is going to be very difficult to afford, and which is why we need to, if we're going to add more diamonds and a more updated facility, which is a needed concept, something that the Recreation Master Plan identified as a hole we have, and something we need to do. We need to consider other lands that we own that no longer need to be in use as sports facilities, or could change their use to something else to offset those costs. So that's why this planning phase, and why it's important to do this planning phase and to take the time we need to do it, so that we have a good plan, an affordable plan going forward to build the thing out completely, get the washrooms built, get the canteen, all the things that will make it work, but in a way that isn't going to overburden the tax levy. Councillor Smith, did you have something? Councillor Smith.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I understand there's some, and forgive my ignorance, but there's some implications environmentally to, we need to let the ground settle through a winter, per se, something to that effect, potentially over multiple years in order to sustain a ball diamond. That's best practice. Is it possible that we can place some emphasis on, once that question is answered, on the study such that we could have that ground dug, I think is perhaps the right term, to align with that winterizing? Is that question at all clear? Councillor Schrader, do you have any?
Kind of. It's certainly something we can include as part of the consultation process, and we're going to rely on them for their expertise as well.
Okay, my question is, can we place the emphasis on the consultation, the tender, that efficiency of the consultation be a consideration? So I know you said depended upon which consultant we went with. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we can place in the RFP the expediency with which they would be able to produce it as a key evaluating factor.
Right.
That's my request.
Yes.
I think it's important just to be clear that the hiring of a consultant is something that will come back to council later in the year as a separate report, and so we'll have an opportunity to have that discussion specifically at that time. At this point, we're just sort of looking at the overall project and whether it's something we want to include or not. And those details we can discuss later. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staff has created a great project here, and just to kind of sum it up, council would like to just see the terms of reference before they go, just so we can have a little bit of input, because we do have a lot of participants in here who can help out. 2, it's going to take at least 2 years for the facility to be created and settled so that the ground is usable, as Councillor Smith was just referring to. So in our forecast, we've got project money stated for this year. 2 years down the line, we've got another $1 million stated in. Whether we do it all at once or phase it in, it's still going to be 2 years before the facility is usable. So in that time, we'll be shaping the diamonds, building the infrastructure, and whether it's watering a well or whatever kind of irrigation we're going to put in, and our facility. So our budget is looking very good to put all this together over that time. It's just a matter of when we get to the consultant, asking what we want, asking what Councillor Mayette said, how are we going to phase in the new diamonds and phase out the old diamonds, and what we do with them. So I think this is a great project, and I'm so looking forward to it.
Yep, in short, much more to come on this discussion. So if there's nothing further on the Ball Diamond project, then we can move on to the washroom roof replacement at Gobles Grove. Are there any questions with regard to that project? Don't see any. So the last one there is the master key replacement. Any questions with regard to the master key? I just read it. I asked if there's any questions. Are there any questions? Do you have a question on it? Okay. Pay attention now. Pay attention. Are there any questions with regard to the master key replacement? See any? Oh, no, Councillor Smith. Councillor Smith.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. And through you, there's reference to this, I believe, in multiple portfolios throughout the capital budget. And I'm just wondering if you can clarify that the $11,000 quoted is per building?
What we'll be doing in this reference is what David referred to previously, is that there's opportunities and consolidation of some projects here, and this is a prime one. We're looking at our eventual goal is to be gone with keys, because believe me, we have lots of keys. We make lots of keys too. Is to eliminate the key usage for all of our facilities and all of our parks anywhere we have a key. We have some experience with a key fob system at our harbor now, and it's been very effective, and we'd like to expand that into our facilities as well. So yes, you will see this in key areas. You'll see it over multiple years, and obviously we want to do that through efficiencies and some potential savings if we were to market this all together.
And through you, Mayor, can you just clarify, so the $11,000 investment, or the funding that's requested here, this will replace approximately what number of keys, or where? Can you say what number of facilities? Is it limited to?
Sorry, until we go through the tender process. Once we go through that process, I'd be happy to come back to council and let them know how many washrooms or facilities that will include.
Any other questions on that item? See any, so why don't we move then on to the tourist camps for item 4.2.
Tourist camps, we're showing a couple of items in there for 2019. For those of you who were on council last year, you'll recall there certainly were some issues at the tourist camp as far as electrical on hot weekends. It was good to know that we weren't the only tourist camp experiencing that in our heat, and of course it always appeared to be on long weekends as well. So we'd like to do a bit of a study on our existing electrical at the tourist camp, and we've also identified a roof replacement at the Port Elgin tourist camp as well.
Are there any questions on either of the projects for the tourist camps? The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Jane, with our electrical study, each of the units in the trailer camp, is the electricity consumption a total consumption, or is it do we have meters at each location?
At each location as in trailer? No, we do not. It's a consumption of the camp, so it's not broken down to each trailer.
Is that something we should look at?
I smile.
Well, we don't want to go there.
We attempted to go there several years ago. We certainly can relook at that, and that may be, through this study, that may be a recommendation when we're done. It's not as easy to install as maybe what it was 10, 15 years ago for individual meters, but again, when we're done the study, that may be a recommendation that we should be considering.
I think individual metering is something that we should definitely hear from out of that study, at least is what the options are, whether it's possible, and maybe a ballpark of what the cost will be, because really the electrical problem that we have isn't necessarily a shortage of supply. The electrical problem we have is that we have some very large units in there that are using an awful lot of electricity, that on those hot weekends they're running air conditioning, and it's overwhelming those systems and leading to brownouts across those trailer camps. And if people were paying individually for that electricity use, we might find conservation. There would be a greater impetus to conservation among trailer park users. So I really think we should look at it. And if two things kind of converge here, because if we do look at the potential of phasing out a ball diamond that happens to be in one of those trailer parks, and that we could replace that ball diamond with additional trailer units, we might increase our revenues, which might be able to offset some of the costs of doing large capital improvements to our electrical systems in there. So I really do hope that will be at least some ideas on whether individual metering is possible, and will come out of this study. We should at least look at it, I think. Are there any other questions? Councillor Schreier.
Thank you. Through you. Is this why we're hiring a consultant to do this? We're not doing it with our in-house master electrician?
No, we'll be hiring a consultant for this.
Okay. And then would part of it maybe, so they'll be looking at what the demands of the park are overall, and maybe our future demands as well, which is great. But will they also be looking at the condition of our existing infrastructures, transformers, things like that, and then be able to provide us with a report
Correct.
With regards to condition assessment?
Correct.
Thank you.
Further questions? Don't see any, so why don't we move on then to the harbor, 4.3.
There's 4 items identified in the harbor and the area of the waterfront as well. So maybe I'll just kind of combine them together if that's okay.
Yep.
The first one is a harbor replacement design, and this was identified in the harbor study that hopefully you've had an opportunity to review. It is on our website as well, and this is the need for improvements on the north side. We're not suggesting at this point that we construct the north side at this point, but we'd like to go through some studies to review the infrastructure that we have there and determine what's the best process moving forward. Again, the audit was very explicit in regards to our usage on the north side, and if you haven't read it, I encourage you to review that. We've also identified along the waterfront some landscaping and brightening up of a trail entrance around what we call the U-Basin, where our gas dock is right now. And I think I've shared this before with council that we have many people that come into Saugeen Shores via our waterways as well, and it's a direct sight line. It's their first impression of Port Elgin when they come in, and right now it's less than desirable at this point. So we'd like to see some landscaping occur and brightening that area up. We've identified Wi-Fi at the beach house, which doesn't currently exist. We have office space down there, so certainly for future office space and as well for our users along the waterfront. And we've had some damage to the range light this year. You can't necessarily see it from land at this point, but on one calm day, we sent staff out to take a look at it, and very preliminary looks. We do have some damage that needs to be replaced, so we'd like to do that as soon as the weather permits.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's just go start at the harbor. There's the one item there, the dock replacement design at the harbor. I just ask any member if they have a question with regard to that. The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, Jean, the 27.5, it says design. Is it, like in the report that was done a few years back, was there an in-depth study done for FGH and IDOCs to determine whether or not they have reached their life expectancy or not? Like, was it that detailed? So has it been determined that those 4 sets of docks definitely have to be replaced after the design's done? So 2020, I guess. Is that determination been made that they're actually done?
There's 2 reasons why we need to take a look at the north side. Yes, the condition of the docks has deteriorated immensely over the last couple of years. We continue to invest in those docks. We install floats every year in order to raise them. We've been in positions where actually one of the docks is pulled off from the main wall before. The other reason is the results in the audit also identify the usage for those docks, and the trend and the demand is really for increased services on the north side. We know that we have limited services on the north side, and if we're content with having less than par as far as occupancy on those docks, then in some cases we can proceed. But boats are bigger. Owners are looking for the amenities such as water and electrical, and we can't give them that right now. They can go to our neighbors and get that. So are we at capacity? No, we're not at capacity, and we'll never be at capacity as long as we continue to not provide the amenities on the north side. Excuse me.
Well, the $2 million investment in the future is significant, and for an operation that makes us about $20,000 a year profit, and years back was $120, I think. So the number's been going down. And you talked about user fees in your report here. It said funding source user fees. I suspect that with the $2 million investment, if it happens in 2020, Jane, you'd be taking another look at our user fees probably too then, would you?
We would, and when we did the north side, we had a strategic approach in that, and I can tell you user fees did increase significantly over the next 5 years in order to advance those payments. So.
Further questions? Councillor Rich?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess our estimation is that we'll probably maximize capacity or get closer to maximizing capacity. I also think that our profits will increase. If I looked in our operational budget, there's some debt load that's going to be coming offline over the next couple of years, which will increase the amount of profit that we make from those facilities. And I guess this is a design, this isn't a consultation. It's $30,000, and it kind of, I guess part of my thinking is, and just to maybe explain this to me, is why don't we just replace them and just replace them with the same kinds of docks we have on the other side? And why do we need a design consultant?
Well, really the reasons why we wanted to solidify what we heard in the audit is really what we're hearing from our boaters as well. We want to take an opportunity to take a look at the trends in boating, and again to solidify what the audit said is correct. If it's council's wish that we proceed, we absolutely can proceed. Doing a design drawing on the north side, a more detailed design drawing, doesn't make sense where the docks are right now. Is there an opportunity where we could reconfigure how the docks are? And as far as efficiencies, every year we take out H-dock. We bring that out every year, and there's wear and tear to those docks. Every time we bring them out, we have to repair them. So is there an opportunity to take a look at how we do our operations as far as opening and closing the harbor too, specifically at the north side? And is there some efficiencies that we could do there? So certainly those were our intentions. Again, I come back to the planning. It's important to plan for these massive projects, which, to be fair, community services, yes, we've had massive projects before. We've never had the intensity of the ones that we have now to deal with. And in order to make sure that these projects come to fruition and we don't miss a beat, consultation and planning is imperative to them.
We'll go to the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through Jane, just a question. With the harbor, have we been in contact with Meaford and Collingwood, who both have the same issues and problems, to see how they deal with the ice, the damage, the movement, the new trend in boating? Have we talked with them?
Yeah, I'm regularly on the phone with Sean in Thornbury. Meaford's a different, Meaford and Kincardine are very similar in the fact that they're both in a river, so they don't necessarily have the same, we don't have the same challenges as each other. But Thornbury is certainly one that we are regularly speaking with Thornbury as far as operations for our harbors, and we share advice and on many aspects, not just harbors as well. But
other comments? Get the Vice Deputy Mayor.
If I could just do a follow-up, just follow up with what Councillor Rich was talking about. Jane, B&C docks, just with the 27.5 design fees. Were the B&C dock boaters fairly happy with the end result, with what the end product turned out to be? Are we happy with B&C?
Yeah, in B&C's cases, we didn't just replace the dock. It just wasn't a simple dock replacement. We also provided them areas for lack of a better word, neighborhood areas. So what I mean by that is that we provided them platforms on their docks, which really provided that sense of community, and it's brought them closer together. It's kind of, I don't want to say a party area, but it's certainly an area that is well used. We also initiated the key fob system, as you recall. We had a lot of we had some issues with individuals walking the docks on a regular basis, and from a security system, I've got the north side. We've got the north side now looking at the south side, saying, no, those are great docks.
So but to follow up again with Councillor Rich and Jane, and if they're happy with B&C, is it within the realm of possibility here that we could go straight to tender? I mean, if we're happy with B&C and we believe that we could replicate that on the north end, could we save this $27,500 by just going straight to tender? Is what Councillor Rich was at. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, we certainly could. I guess what I was trying to do is in our attempt to take a look at all of our capital projects over the next 5 years, we were being cognizant of demands and certainly not...
I was referring to 2020, not so much this year, but again, 27.5 is a lot of money, and if we're happy with B&C, perhaps we replicate what's there and save the 27.5 and go to tender. But we could talk about that later.
CAO?
Yeah, I just want to comment that the 27.5 reflects about a 1% design cost of a $2.5 million budget. So I think it would be it's a good investment of a $2.5 million project to invest 1% in the design. If it was 10% or 20% or something like that, the risk of not having a design and going straight to tender, I think could be not cost effective for us.
Let's also not forget, though, that we have we have a study that we just received last year that made some recommendations to us about different things that we ought to consider doing to make the operation more profitable. Things that we could do on the other side, on the north side, that might better accommodate the needs or the interests of people and drive up those profits. You know, as the Vice Deputy Mayor rightly pointed out, the profits have been declining. They've sort of stabilized about where they are, but it's not good enough, right? That operation needs to be more profitable. And we have recommendations on how to make it more profitable, and we should, I think just a replication of what's on the south side it isn't necessarily reflective of what was in those recommendations, and may not be the most profitable ultimate solution. So I really feel like we should hire somebody to look at that report and design something that's going to maximize profits from the operation, and I think this could be money well spent in that regard. There were questions down the table. We'll start with Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jane, I did look back through the report and saw sort of the 10-year projected figure in terms of what the profit would be, around in the low 80,000, I think, per year. Do you have any figures? I couldn't find, and it's not that it's not in there, I just couldn't spot it. Are there any figures on what kind of spending harbor users bring into our community per season? Like restaurants, shopping, do we have anything like that?
Yeah, sorry, I don't have any statistics on that. I can certainly discuss that with Chamber of Commerce to see if they have anything like that, but that's not a study that we've undertaken ever.
Seems like that would be relevant to me, anyway.
It's
besides user fees, how much do these people bring to our community in terms of other expenditures? And I wonder if that could be included in this.
Yeah, about 50% of our boaters are locals. They are from town, and we do have statistics on where they come from as well, which could assist with some of that too. So certainly we could consider something like that.
There's something, Councillor Mayette?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to say, and I think you captured the gist of it, is this consultant's report that we received about a year and a half ago on the harbour. And I sat here and spoke criticizing that report, saying that I thought it was a little outlandish. But since then, I spent a lot of time at the harbour last year. I had a very modest boat in the harbour myself, and I got to talk. Whenever I had the opportunity, I would approach some of these bigger yachts that come in, and I had a good conversation with a couple of them, and I've come to learn that having increased amenities, in particular higher amperage power supplies, is something that these patrons are looking for. And when they do come here, they have thick wallets, and usually it's green colored money inside them too.
We'll take one more on this, and I want to carry on the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a great project going forward. Get the study done, and as Councillor Mayette said, and I remember last year, he was criticizing people with big boats. Why do they need them now that he sees that? As part of our tourism study, as part of our sports tourism that I'd like to see going a little further, if you build the amenities as Jane is suggesting, we will bring in boats. We need to redesign. Boats are bigger. They require more. It's just like our tourist camps. So let's get this study done, get our new docks designed, get the amperage down there, get the water down there. And my motto is, if you build it, they will come, and we can do that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good. So let's just go through the waterfront ones, and we'll take a brief break after that. Are there questions? There's 5 proposed capital projects under waterfront. The first one is signage. Are there any questions with regard to that one? I don't see any. Any questions with regard to the waterfront promenade landscaping? The Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I went down by the harbour the last couple of days, and I see there's some, for lack of a better term, capital work going on there. There's a new fence, and there's a new, call it an addition. It looks more like a shed on the back of the harbour office. Is this part of the work that took place for the fuel tanks? Is this carry over, or is this in addition? Because I didn't see this conceptualized, having this shed and
no, it's the finalization of the fuel tank project and the electro project from last year, and that's just they're finishing it off.
Yeah, we had to have a fence around that thing.
We don't make the rules for that, but yeah, we did.
rough-looking design.
Further comments with regard to landscaping? Any, so that moves us on then to the wooden boardwalk. Questions with regard to the boardwalk extension? No? Okay. Comments with regard to the beach house Wi-Fi? I was just going to ask the question, Jane, is that beach house Wi-Fi intended to serve the public? And if so, to what extent? Are we just talking, will it be inside the building, or will it be extended out onto the beach? And if so, to what extent extended out onto the beach? Maybe you could just put, what I'm asking, put some parameters around where we're going to service with Wi-Fi, I guess.
Both, actually, for the office as well and for the extension onto the beach. Several years ago, when there was discussions occurring in regards to, excuse me, Wi-Fi in the downtown core, there was also conversations to include the waterfront. Obviously, the downtown core is taking a little bit longer, but this is an easy win that certainly would enhance our visitor expectations and experience, and certainly can assist with driving individuals up to our core downtown through marketing campaigns, or however we decide to use the package once we get it, so to speak.
Questions, Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a similar question about the scope of how far the signal would reach. So it would be onto the beach area?
Correct.
Okay. And do we already have significant amount of seating and stuff around the beach house that people could, sit outside and use the Wi-Fi? Are we planning to do that?
We had, I want to say, 4 or 5 benches around the beach house itself, and then obviously down the promenade we have benches as well.
So the Wi-Fi signal would go as far as going down the promenade too?
Yeah, we expect it will be out onto the waterfront, onto the beach area.
Okay.
Further questions on that one? Councillor Schreider.
Thank you. Through you, you talk about potential office or administrative purposes. What kind of ideas are we looking at for that?
We have no long-term plans for that office. Last year, we assisted with Pumpkin Fest, and they used that area for once the beach house was completed until October. We have expressed that they may use that again this year, but that's not a long-term solution. Eventually, we may need that office space for someone. It may become a tourist office. There are some opportunities there, but right now we haven't pigeonholed ourselves into a long-term tenant at this point.
And just one follow-up question. This would be the capital investment of $6,600, but there must be ongoing operational costs in order to maintain this software. Do we know what that is as well?
Yeah, they're quite minimal, is my understanding, and we certainly wouldn't have this up for 12 months of the year. I was trying to get a sense of what those costs are, and I'm going to guess and say about, I don't know, $80 a year or something along that line. I'm a little unsure at this point right now, but there will be operating costs to that for sure.
Further on this one? I guess one final thing for me, the reserve from which the $6,600 is drawn from the waterfront, or the harbor waterfront reserve, was that the one that was built through contributions from the Tourist Association?
Correct.
All right. And is there funding remaining in that reserve after we withdraw
I'm going to say maybe 25,000.
Okay, well, very good. Well, so that's an excellent use for that reserve fund, as that was things like this were primarily what that money was raised for. So yeah, an exciting project. So then the very last one there is the range light repairs. Any questions or comments with regard to that one? So let's break for 10 minutes. We'll reconvene at just about 25 after the hour. So we're carrying on then through the community services projects and heading on then to 4.5, the Coliseum. So we'll turn it over to the director.
Yeah, thank you. For 2019, 2 projects that we're looking at for the Coliseum. Replacing the original condenser is certainly a requirement, and we're replacing an 8-year-old edger.
Questions on either of those projects? Don't see any, so why don't we move on to the Plex admin building?
At the Plex, we have one project on, and we're looking at replacing our fall arrest. It was originally installed in 2012, and unfortunately, we've had a considerable amount of ice damage occur because of the slope of the roof and a metal roof, and we'd like to look at a more robust system that will stand up to the elements.
Any questions about the fall arrest system? Don't see any, so the pool.
Pool's looking at replacing plus purchasing additional tot docks to enhance their program right now. I can tell you our preschool programs filled up in 4 hours this fall, so certainly a demand for that area, and can certainly increase the programmable space that we have for the younger classes.
Any questions about the pool, the tot docks? Is the new unit intended to be easier for staff to handle? In any way, I noticed sitting there myself, watching them move that around and drop it into the pool and drop themselves into the pool, and it's some of them are younger people, yeah. And it's a big unit, and it strikes me as being a little risky. I just wonder, is it easier to handle, or is there any accommodation being made for staff on
They're
that
definitely
front?
awkward, and our challenge is no storage space. So not only are they a challenge in the water, but they're also a challenge out of the water because they become playground apparatuses for kids waiting for swimming lessons.
Right.
The ones that we have are probably close to 20 years old right now. There's certainly no new trends in the field. Sort of me investigating them specifically. I've got young Michael here that has done that work for me. So we'll take a look and see. Obviously, he wants to make sure what's safe for staff.
So there is some potential for some improvements.
Yes,
then. That's good.
absolutely.
All right, so nothing more on that then. 4.8 then, other facilities.
Number of items in other facilities. We've included the existing police station enhancements to determine what may happen, and we're just talking about a coat of paint, maybe some carpets, just to clean it up once the police have left. Not that the police have left it messy. We just want to do some cleanup. The other thing is in here, as Jamie had identified, the key fob. You'll see this trend in our facilities as well. We have 2 roof replacements, which will consolidate through a tender process. MTO accessibility, that's our building, I remind you, and the front door is not accessible at this point. And the Lawn Bowling Club, it's a great program that is offered particularly for the older adults in Saugeen Shores, and the facility itself is looking quite tired. I've provided a couple of pictures in there. They've done quite a bit over the years to enhance the building, and this would probably be the final item for a number of years.
Okay, so we'll go through the project list there. Let me just get back to it quickly. So number 1, the police office reconfiguration. Questions or comments? Councillor Schreier.
Thank you, through you. So we don't have an intended purpose at this time for that building once the police move, correct?
Yes, I'll answer that question. We do not have a formal plan, correct?
Okay. So I guess I would just question and throw it out there that I'm not sure about spending, $27,000 to clean it up a little bit when we don't know what the intended purpose is going to be. If we lease it out or we use it for something within the municipality, then it would be made to suit those businesses or that use. I'm just not sure if this is throwing away money without knowing what the purpose is ahead of time. Thank you.
Further questions or comments? I would suggest that I would also suggest this is one that you could potentially defer if we came up with an option for the police office partway through 2019. You could always fund changes from reserves if you had to in order to accommodate a new use, and hopefully if the new use was revenue generating, you could pay back the reserves. So I think if we were going to, I think it's a useful project and necessary, and we will need to reconfigure the building because we'll need to reuse it and will need to happen, and we'll need to be prepared to spend some money. But I think if council were looking for changes or reductions, this would be one that you could potentially look at later in the year, probably. The CAO?
Yes, certainly we can do that. The intent of this was as a placeholder to a certain extent. We do know that the police are going to be taking material out, so cell doors, there will be some construction, so part of this is making the facility safe. agree that a plan would be appropriate.
It's just something to think about as we come toward the end of the day. Why don't we move on then to the municipal office master key? The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we're looking at replacing the keys with fob system, which is great. How many different fobs are we going to be carrying then now? Is it going to be one fob does all?
Correct.
All right, further questions? The Vice Deputy Mayor?
Just around 11,000 again, Jane, like 11,000 for the master key for, is this for the municipal office you're talking about?
This is for this municipal office.
And 11,000 I see down here coming up for the Southampton Town Hall, it's 22,000. And then there's another 11,000 you mentioned earlier, for 33,000 for master key, is that correct?
Yeah, we'll...
And so the 11,000 for the park system seems to be a fairly large park system out there, a lot of buildings. 11,000, so I bought that number. I think that's a fair number. So it seems extravagant, 11,000 for single buildings versus 11,000 for all of the buildings.
So it's for single buildings, but what we would do is we would tender them as a collaboration, I'll say, of all of them together, going through the process, going through the companies, because different companies provide different services. We'd like to see what comes back with what we can provide. If we can provide to get a majority of them done, then that's certainly our intention. As I indicated before, we have a real issue with keys.
Jane, I don't question that. I think changing out the system is a good plan.
Right.
I'd look at $33,000. That's what my concern is.
Yeah, unfortunately, there is a cost to it for sure, and it's escalated. Yeah. And it's something that staff feel there's value in this. This is a worthy program coming forward because it's one of the biggest complaints I get from staff on a regular basis, particularly when we groups and organizations. Certainly there is a cost for it. It'll be obviously our intention to keep that as low as we possibly can, and it'll be council's decision if they wish to reduce.
Yeah, they only do, okay.
I'm just going to comment that security of municipal assets is of critical importance. And I've seen in other communities, this is where, after something happens, everyone goes, well, why didn't you? Why does the person who was a parks employee 12 years ago still have a key? And that's a challenge when we have students, when we have multiple facilities, when it's very expensive. The key fob system can be turned off. You can give access to a particular person over all facilities or limited facilities. You can check which person is going in at what time. So it is a high level of security. We have had an incident in the last year. But again, I go back to the message of, in retrospect, it's very hard to defend why we don't have secure facilities.
Okay, why don't we move then on to the Dr. Earl Medical Roof. Oh, pardon me. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jane, how do these work in the case of a power outage?
Many of them have battery backups, which will allow them over a certain number of hours to continue. This building, obviously, we have a generator, so there's no problem with this. Correct, if that's the system that we end up purchasing.
Is there anything further on that before I move on? Anything? So let's then move on to the Dr. Earl Medical Roof Replacement. Any questions with regard to the roof replacement at the Dr. Earl Medical Facility? Any? So how about key replacement at the Southampton Town Hall? Deputy Mayor.
Jane, is that just for downstairs for the art office, or is that upstairs to go up to the theater room upstairs?
It's both.
Thank you.
Anything further on that? Don't see anything. So how about accessibility items, Chamber of Commerce? Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, the Chamber of Commerce just recently did a paint job, and I believe that they funded it on their. I know they funded it on their own, and I see there's a few items here that are along the. Unless we're talking just about accessibility, but like carpet and things like that. Where do we draw the line between what is the tenant's responsibility and what's the owner's responsibility with regards to keep of the facility?
So we have an agreement with all of our tenants, and our agreements outline. When it comes to items such as security and accessibility, that falls on to the landlord, which is us. So in all of our buildings where we've gone through this process, that's at the expense of the municipality.
Perhaps I was reading somewhere else where we were talking about carpets and things like that.
Anything further on the accessibility items for the Chamber? Don't see anything, so the Chamber of Commerce roof. Any questions on the Chamber of Commerce roof? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jane, I think maybe 6 months ago or so, I inquired about, I think there was a leaking ceiling, or would the ceiling repair be included in this as well?
We realize that damage has occurred within the vault area of the Chamber of Commerce, so we'll need to do some repair work with that as well.
Great, thank you.
Further comments about the roof replacement at the Chamber of Commerce? Anything? So the final one on the list is lawn bowling building. Any questions with regard to the repairs to the lawn bowling building? The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, this is one of those unknown hidden gems that we have in the community. Lawn bowling is something most people think is, you think of people in white shirts and shorts and shoes, but it's very popular in town. We've combined the two. Don't smile. I had to teach it in school. It's a very hard one. Once you start squatting for a couple hours, you'll understand. But the building itself does need work, and I totally approve this. The people that are in there, they do their best. They raise money for this, so I totally support the lawn building facelift.
Anything further on the lawn bowling club? Don't see anything, so I think that brings our time with the Director of Community Services to an end. So thank you, Jane, for your work, and we'll move on now to item 5, Infrastructure and Development Services, and we will turn it over to the Director of SAME for her comments.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. This year, our department is going to focus on studies, and you'll see that throughout this. We want to have a good understanding of our infrastructure condition, its needs, and how we're going to accommodate growth in our town. Tying these studies together at the same time is going to create synergies. We'll be able to have the DC background study talk to the wastewater management stuff and talk to drainage and transportation. They all can come together with the same recommendations moving forward, and I think that's a unique and a great opportunity. We have 7 road projects that are going to continue on. As David had mentioned, we've been doing design 1 year, construction another year, and we are extensively using consultants for these projects, which is a change to our department. There's a few that are managed internally by the design, but most will be external. And since this package was put together, the county has changed their timing for some of their projects for Bruce Road 25 and Ridge Street. So as we get through those, I may just tell you that those ones have been postponed by a year. So we can move on to engineering. So for engineering, these are software tools that we use and money for survey consultants to support next year's projects. For 2020 construction would be the pre-engineering. DigSmart, GIS, and Esri Roads are software that will help the engineering group do the services that we provide.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're on item 5.1, engineering. So why don't we move through the proposed capital projects and begin with pre-engineering. Are there any questions with regard to the pre-engineering project? Councillor Schreider.
Thank you. Through you, Amanda, is this then staff that is doing this work, or is this for the equipment?
This is for a survey consultant that goes out and does it. So sometimes our staff do it. This is when we hire external.
Thank you.
Anything further? See anything more? So how about DigSmart Locate software? Any questions with regard to the DigSmart Locate software? See any? Oh, yep, Councillor Smith.
Yes, through you, Mayor. This is sort of an overarching theme that I don't believe Oscar's in the room, but I have some questions related to a number of the software proposals relative to existing or enhanced interfaces that would exist. Who manages those? I know we've talked at length about our IT department of one. I'm curious if we've done any total cost of ownership assessments to see what the long-term implications of these software purchases might be. Licensing fees, upgrades, those types of things. How does that fit into our operational budget?
And through you, Mr. Mayor, our GIS asset manager Laura takes care of the engineering software that way. When it comes to Esri, they are our base platform for asset management and GIS, and so these are add-ons to that same platform. They get managed that way. They're also the same platform that the county uses, so you'll see like in the Esri roads, there isn't an annual budget number to it for operating, because if the county gets that add-on, then we get it for free. So we have our ArcGIS for free because we're part of the county's license. So there is ongoing maintenance obligations on some of them, and those are paid through our operation budget, but Laura manages those upgrades in that for us.
Anything further on DigSmart software? We can move on to the GIS Asset Manager software. Vice Deputy Mayor?
Mayor, Amanda, the question I wrote down here is, will additional staff be required to operate new software? I'm talking about the GIS asset management software, ESRI roads and highway software, or is this designed to make things more efficient with existing staff? Is there going to be any staff impacts in the future with these two new purchases?
Mr. Mayor, these software will allow our existing staff to do more and provide more information faster with a better level of service.
Yeah.
Good. Councilor Schreider?
Thank you. Through you. So does this replace our existing asset management software?
No, it does not.
It does not. So it's a module of?
That's correct.
Okay. And then there's future modules, work order system, and it has the capability for work order system and tying into the financial if it's Keystone. Like, do we have those capabilities of moving forward?
Yes, these two will allow us more, we can tie our assets better together, so it'll allow us to make models of our sanitary sewers as an example, and we'll have distribution models, so we can do more analysis through the computer that way. We are already using work orders, so we tie a work order to an asset, which then when you produce your asset management report, you can have, say, Bricker Street between Street A and Street B. We know that 15 potholes were done in the last 5 years. Those are tied to that. These software programs allow us to make those reports.
Perfect. Thank you.
Am I understanding correctly that this is an expense really driven by provincial legislation, that we need to step up this software in order to meet the new asset management requirements coming down the pike from the province, or is there more to it than that in your view?
In my view, this is what will enable us to meet those targets as they come along without having a lot of staff time to figure out how to do it. A lot of what we're doing as well, Laura's doing training that comes along with the software that we keep buying that allows her to do risk assessments and learn more and get us ahead of the game so we can do our proper capital forecasting and meet those provincial targets. So you could do it without, but I don't think it would be easy or less expensive, honestly.
So it's an important point, and when we talk with our provincial counterparts about costs that are driven by regulation, here's one prime example of regulation-driven cost imposed by the provincial government. Anything further on GIS asset management? Then we can look at item 4, Esri Roads and Highways Extension. Any comments on that project area? See any? So we can then move on to roads, roadsides, and sidewalks. And Amanda, do you have any comments for us on that area?
So just quickly, we have 2 annual rehabilitation programs, which are the drainage pits and asphalt resurfacing program. The other are combined as 7 road projects. They're presented as more so you can see them block by block.
Okay, why don't we just start, it's a pretty significant document there, the 10-year capital plan. I guess I'll just ask any members if they have any questions with regard to that one to begin. I don't see Oh, yeah, the Vice Deputy Mayor. No, the Vice Deputy Mayor, and then we'll get Councillor Myatt.
My question relates to, and Amanda, maybe you sent me a note on this morning. I haven't a chance to read your comment. It was about River Road. And in the 10-year capital forecast, I clearly recall, well, there were two public presentations dating back to the early 2000s and go way back, but from the River Road residents pertaining to the straightening up two bends out there and reconstructing the road and taking an engineering look at River Road, and it's something that the residents out there have asked on a couple of occasions, and there was $150,000 placed into the capital budget back in 2013-14, I believe. It was for an engineering study for River Road, and it was to take a look at acquiring a couple parcels of land, and I know our mayor is probably familiar with this because he was a township councilor at one point, but softening the two corners out there, purchasing a couple parcels of land. Do you tar and chip the road? Do you asphalt the road? What does the future look like for River Road? And that number has disappeared in the capital forecast. And I just wonder when it disappeared, why it disappeared, and I don't see it anywhere on the 10-year capital forecast. So it's not showing up at all now, and I'm just wondering why River Road's not there.
So I was unaware till your email about it being on the capital program. It was not here in my tenure. The last staff report we have had no further action as the recommendation from staff. So to me, that would be why it's not considered. It would not meet the criteria for risk or condition to be in the 10-year capital plan. To be looked at, we would need to go through a Class EA, probably a Schedule B, Schedule C program to look at the River Road realignment or any alternatives to that. If that's a council direction, then I would suggest we could bring it forward. In 2020, it would not be an inexpensive project, and it still would probably not meet the intent of the conditions and asset management plan.
I think it's just something, Mr. Mayor, that, and I don't know whether Councillor Matt wanted to comment on it or not, but it's just something I think that we need to continue to place it on our radar. It's been a long time. There's been a couple of requests over the years from the River Road people to take a look at some investment in that road, and so I just don't want to lose it. It was there, disappeared, and I just like it to reappear at some point.
Myatt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Echoing those thoughts, I guess, but more generally, I see a lot of the resurfacing, which in my mind I always think is kind of a maintenance or an operating task, but I guess it classifies as capital project. But are any of the projects that are listed in either the 5-year or the 10-year plan roads that are not currently asphalt that are being upgraded to asphalt? I mean, it's been a long time since we converted a road. As we grow and as people build homes on, further and further. I'm thinking of not Carlisle, but out in Southampton, Grenville and Albert, I think. And there's a few roads out there that they're getting these big homes built on them, and they remain gravel. And it would be nice to see at some point that if we're doing a capital project that we expand our asphalt footprint outside. There's a section of concession 2 east of the highway that has 400 yards of gravel on what is a completely asphalted road that's been overlooked over the years. And I know, or I've been told by the former mayor of Saugeen Township, that there was a plan to do all of these at one point in time, and it's just, we haven't seen any upgrades. We've seen lots of maintenance, lots of tear it off and put it back on, but not a lot of moving forward. It'd be nice to see some of that.
Further comments with regard to the 10-year roads capital plan? Oh, Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Amanda, I just had a question about under 2027 and 2029, Bredalbin from Saugeen to Clarendon appears twice. Is that contingency putting it in 2029 just in case it doesn't get done, or?
I believe it's just a typo. I'm not sure why it came up on the twice.
I just would make the comment. I'm happy to see this statement actually made in the paragraph written at the beginning of the plan about the 3-year process. You know, the beginning probably with consultation and giving yourself lots of runway to consult, to design, to reconsult on design, and then finally to build in year 3. I know that the County of Bruce is also working on those kind of timelines as well, looking at 3-year. Every one of these projects is ultimately a 3-year project from conception to completion, and I think that's a smart way to do it, and it's going to lead to good outcomes and lots of opportunity to prepare the public for some of these projects before they happen. So I just wanted to make the comment. I really appreciate that that statement in that report. So why don't we move on then to the proposed capital projects, and we'll just work through 1 through 14 here. The first one is the asphalt resurfacing program. Questions or comments with regard to that? Oh, the Vice Deputy Mayor?
Just a question I had was, are we really falling, like, I see next year it's 100,000, Amanda. We really, like, is this kind of a danger area we're heading into, with falling behind? Are we losing ground here with asphalt?
So through you, Mr. This is one of the ways the asset management plan is helping us. So instead of letting something exist to failure of a road, then you can do many different things to extend the life. So the first one is the crack and seal program that we've we started again. And then the next one is the asphalt resurfacing. So when the infrastructure below the ground is still good, then we don't need to be replacing all of that, and we can do this. So this would get us another 20 or 30 years on that road with that infrastructure underneath. So as we're seeing it, we've been spending very little on this, and so next year the proposal is to be able to catch back up and get more roads this way.
100,000, which would help us get caught up.
Anything further on asphalt resurfacing? Don't see anything. Drainage pits. Any questions with regard to drainage pit maintenance? See anything there? So Beach Street reconstruction, Lake Street to Huron. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the introduction that you gave in your initial report, I'm assuming that this reconstruction will be including consulting the residents in that neighborhood about the road. Will there be any road redesign, or will it be, it says it's brought up to urban standards?
That is the intention. We will come back in the spring and do those road public information centers like we have done the last couple of years, and show what the conceptual plan for Beach Street is on this one. We do want to improve the drainage on that street with storm sewers. So when we do that, we are looking at installing curbs along Beach Street.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Looking through you to Amanda, I'm looking at Beach Street, and on the plan, the real problem is Beach Street from Lake Street down to Jerry's Fries, that section that runs right alongside the last part of the tourist camp and past Macaulay. It is narrow, it is small, but I don't see it on the forecast for that section of the road to be fixed. And I think it's a major issue, and I see the police chief nodding his head back there. He knows it's small and narrow. Is there any plan to fix the rest of Beach Street?
And through you, Mr. Mayor, it's when it comes into that asset management future capital program. This is the condition of the water main that's pushing this section. It needs to be replaced. So while we're there, we're doing the top as well.
Okay, so then if there's nothing further on Beach Street, then we can move on to McNabb, reconstruction railway to Peel. Questions or comments? Anything there? So how about Davy Drive, reconstruction, Bricker to Wellington? Questions or comments? Vice Deputy Mayor?
Amanda, I keep the Ontario Community Infrastructure Funding keeps showing up. A couple of pages here, I think. Do you know what the total amount is for that level of funding?
I can get that to you.
Just curious,
it's published on their website, so I can pull that off. Gas tax is available the same way. I can get those for the
Yeah, I'm
next
just curious what the
5
total
years.
amount of funding was. I'm just curious,
Yeah.
yeah.
I do have it. I don't have it.
No, that's
at hand.
fine.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My apologies. I just want to go back to Peel Street for a second. We're redoing Peel Street from, McNabb from Peel to the highway, and we're putting it to urban standards. Will there be a sidewalk on there? Because that is a major walkway path for everybody as they're leading from one section of town across the other. And South Stables is a major draw now, people walking there. Will we be widening the road enough to put a sidewalk in, or is that in the plans?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure. I'll double check. This is being done by a consultant on behalf of the developer for the lands adjacent to it. So I'll check the drawings and I'll get back to you as to what they're proposing. We would have to approve it, obviously, but I just don't remember what's on it.
Okay, that'd be something to look at, especially with the drainage creek that's there. It's probably under, or I know it's under Saugeen Valley's jurisdiction, but so when we go to widen the road, if you can get a sidewalk on there, that would be fantastic.
So we're on Davy Drive. Any further comments on Davy? Don't see any, so let's move to the Ridge Street Sanitary Sewer, Ivings to Bruce Road 25. Questions or comments there, the director?
So this is one that's postponed because of the scope change for the Bruce Road 25. We won't be doing this year.
Okay, good to know. So if there's nothing further, okay, I guess I should just ask on that. Then can it just be removed from the budget, or will it then be removed from the 2019 budget?
That's correct. We'll remove it from the budget.
All right. So then maybe you should make some comments on this next one too. Bruce Road 25, Phase 1 and 2.
Sure. So with the county, we're going to continue on Phase 1, which is the installation of the storm sewer outlet at Gobles Grove Beach up to Shipley Avenue. And that will be the extent of the road reconstruction for 2019.
Will there then be some amendment to the budget then in regard to that, to limit it to accommodate just the elements that we're actually going to construct and then delay till 2019? Is that we can expect that in later versions of the budget then?
Yes, absolutely. And on that point, none of these are funded through taxation.
Yeah.
So it doesn't actually have an effect on the tax rate.
It's good though to get the budget down to exactly what we're going to do so that we don't sort of have expectations, I think. So it'd be good to get it as close to accurate as we can. Is there anything more, I guess, on that one, the Vice Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, so Mandy, just so I hear from you directly again, the construction of the outlet from Gobles Grove up to Lake Range Road. Is that the first section you talked about?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Shipley Avenue.
Shipley Avenue. Okay. Will it? And I think you know where I'm heading with this question. Will it include the design of the swale system at the outlet to the waterfront, or is that going to be after that construction takes place?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, once again, there is not a swale system. There is an outlet to a plunge pool that provides the energy dissipation from the water. The intention is that the water infiltrates at that time. Then the water, when the capacity of that plunge pool is exceeded, the water will raise at a constant level like water does, and then it'll flow over and sheet flow towards the lake. We're not proposing to install a swale from the head wall to the water's edge, because that would continue to erode and we would get complaints about having that water course down to the lake. So we're hoping that all water is mitigated at the outlet through infiltration. We have designed all the storm sewer upstream on the tablelands to infiltrate. They take a 2-year design storm, which is 90% of the rainfall events that we experience. So the number of times that we see the plunge pool's capacity being exceeded are minimal. And through working with the SVCA, Community Services, and Public Works staff, the better decision is to allow maintenance to happen through machinery when that occurs.
Amanda, the Port Elgin Saugeen Beach Association are very keen on the development of a swale landscape system, and I think you've had several conversations with the Beach Association on this. So Will that be communicated with the Beaches Association in terms of the landscape plan for the end of pipe is a preferred option for the Port Algonquin Beach Association, those cottagers along there, I know. So, and they were prepared to contribute towards a landscape plan. So, you will be communicating your message to the Port Algonquin Beach Association?
And yes, we still commit to continuing our conversations with the Beachers Associations. We're working on a consultation communications plan. And when we met with the Beachers in the summer, we talked about having them provide input into the landscape plan, making it an opportunity, a learning facility to go along with the parquet, where you can learn about the importance of dune grasses, you can learn about the importance of stormwater management, what these things all entail through signage and education.
So a landscape
programs.
plan is still an option?
It's not an option as a necessity. So it will need to be done, and it will be done with the Beachers' input.
Just to follow up on that specific point, is the landscape, an enhanced landscape plan, part of this budget for that? Because we are constructing it this year, or that's the plan. Are we intending also to have an enhanced landscape as part of this budget?
Not for 2019, because when we build it, we want to let it set and be there. So spring of 2020, we'll come back with a plan that has been worked through with the Beaches Association, that they're happy with, that we're approving, SVCA is happy with, and then construct that piece in 2020.
We can anticipate to be discussing financing that as part of the 2020 budget.
That's correct.
All right. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question, I guess, kind of goes to you and Amanda. As we're developing these collector roads, will we be putting bike lanes on them to go along with our bike-friendly initiative in town?
Mr. Mayor, this does have a multi-use path along the north side of Bruce Road 25.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions with regard to Bruce Road 25? Ultimately, Phase 1, not Phase 2. No? Okay, then we'll move on then to Emerald Drive, Albert Street to Bend. Questions or comments with regard to Emerald Drive? Don't see any. How about Albert Street, Emerald to Palmerston? The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These are all good projects, but we're looking at major artery roads, Highway 21 coming into Southampton. And when we look at Palmerston Street, we've got several businesses that will be affected. Normally the plan we do one side, let traffic go through, or will we be closing the road down and diverting around?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. These are all being done together. The water supply line is one project. We're working with Cobide Engineering to provide the contract administration, and part of the tendering package that they're requesting from contractors is a scheduling, traffic control plan, detour routes. All of that will come in as part of our assessment of the contractor. But when it comes to Albert Street, we need to work with MTO on any closures. So our hope is lane closures, and at most there may be one direction detours on Albert Street. When it comes to Palmerston, it will be a full lane closure with daily access to it. We will work with the businesses on those streets to see what needs to be accommodated and how often we can get in and out. Normally when you're in front of your driveway, you're closed while that trench is open for sure. But when it's not, we can get access into those parking areas.
Well, one is Palmerston. We have a funeral home on there. So, yeah. Yes, we do not know when the business is going to be there. But the other one is the market. When we do close, there is now only one access because we closed the laneway access off of Penn Street to get in there. So I imagine you'll be looking into that to let them know how we can get into the market.
For sure.
Thank you.
I guess I was just wondering if in each one of these few that involves the new water service to the tower, you make the comment about the OCIF top-up funding being required for twinning of the water main. If that top-up funding is not received, just so I'm clear, does the project still proceed without the twinning, or do you delay the project in hopes of funding twinning? There are some benefits to twinning this line. I just wonder, I guess, your comments on that.
Yep, our intention is to move forward without twinning if we don't get the funding. The water supply line is at that condition point where we need to replace it, and we tried already once for the funding and didn't get it, so if we try the second time and we don't get it, we're just going to move on single.
Okay. Nope. Anything further? So I'm on... which one was I on? I guess we're moving. I was on Emerald. No, I was on Emerald to Palmerston, and we've moved past that. So Palmerston from Albert to Victoria. Let's see. Comments. Victoria, Palmerston to the water tower. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Will we be moving the fire vehicles during this time so that they have access in and out because we'll be digging up in front?
Again, we will be working with the fire department to make sure that the access is provided during the construction time. This one is just a lot of water main. It's not as big a construction project as some of the other ones, for sure.
And are there any opportunities as part of that section, Victoria Street, to implement any parts of the Southampton Streetscape Plan? That section of Victoria Street was included in the Streetscape Plan, if I recall correctly. Are there any? Has that been considered at all when you come back to reconstruction of the road?
We haven't considered that, honestly. The Streetscape project is another project that we'll discuss later that is going back to consultation instead of having the design that was done together. But from when the consultant had done it to when the BA worked on it, the Streetscape was only on High Street, so it hasn't been considered on Victoria.
Just to have a look at it, because the original consultant's report that was received by council, I suppose, did include designs on Victoria Street that were, obviously the more controversial sections were on High Street. The Victoria Street sections, it would be interesting to revisit it anyway and see if, since you are going to tear that piece of road apart, to see if there was any opportunities for synergies in terms of implementation. Just a review of that might be useful. Anyway, so is there anything further on the Victoria Street section of that project? Those items 8 through 11 are really one big project, and a major project, and it would be a good one to see completed to secure the supply of water to the tower, and it'll be disruptive, but I know you guys will have a good plan to communicate to the public about why we're doing that and how we're doing it and how it's going to work, and looking forward to seeing that project underway. So, item 12, the Port Elgin Downtown Interlocking Brick Repair. Any questions or comments with regard to that? I don't see any. Is that the end of that project?
This will be one full block this year, and we have $20,000 for next year, and then it'll be complete.
Okay. So, item 13, Capital Sidewalk Replacement Program. Questions or comments? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Amanda, as we're replacing sidewalks, we go into standard size, is it 4 feet, 3 feet, 6 feet? What's the standard size now? I know our machine, the blade can change to adapt to it, but we're going to a standard size now throughout town. I know former councillor Menage really was worried about this.
Yes, all of our capital sidewalk programs are being replaced with a 5-foot sidewalk from the 3 or 4 foot that exists.
Further questions? Any? So the last one there, Goddard Street Sidewalk Extension. Questions or comments? Well, it'd be nice to see that section completed out to there. That gets us out to the new daycare facility currently under construction, and now you'll be able to walk sidewalk once that's completed all the way basically from the 10th concession to County Road 25, which is really significant and the result of many years of incrementally implementing these sidewalk projects, so good to see. So if there's nothing further on roads and roadsides, then we can move on to bridges and culverts. Any comments on this, Amanda?
So for bridges, you'll see the $75,000 a year. So every 2 years we are obligated to do a bridge condition assessment, and the $75,000 is the money that we budget to fulfill the recommendations out of that to keep our bridges in the condition that they need to be in. The other one is the McEwen Bridge. It's being designed currently right now by a consultant, and the estimate for construction is so high that we believe delaying it for 3 more years to have the money put aside into the reserve before we go to construction is the best way to finance it.
Rich?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and I probably should have asked this before, but it just occurred to me now. What's the name of the bridge on the side road 1314 off the 6th concession?
That's the Kolb Bridge. Kolb, K-O-L-B.
Further questions? We have the 2 bridge capital projects there, the McEwing Bridge, which is, as Amanda pointed out, the beginning of, 4 years of contributions from taxation toward the replacement of the McEwing Bridge, and then the bridge rehabilitation that Amanda also mentioned. So, are there any questions on either of those projects? Seeing none. Oh, no. Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, far be it for me to criticize spending money on bridges, because it's been a topic of conversation ever since I've been involved in this council. And this McEwing Bridge, this is the one out, for those that don't know, it's on 1819 between Concession 2 and the town line. This is, as far as I can tell, a very lightly used road. It's closed right now, and I haven't heard a whole lot of complaints about not being able to use that road. I think the people even that live on Concession 2, they're used to going either east towards Paisley or west towards Highway 21. And as we contribute to this reserve at $500,000 a year, not an insignificant sum of money, I'm just wondering if we'll have a chance to prioritize which bridges are of more impact than others. And I'm sure there are people who do use this bridge, but from what I can tell over 20 years of living in the area, this one isn't as critical as some of the other ones. So I agree with building up the reserve, but maybe we need to prioritize them as the time goes on. Thanks.
And it might be worth recirculating for council's information. A number of years ago, there was an assessment of all of these bridges done. They were prioritized, and there was some information in that report determining which of these were higher priority, and some decisions have already been made. Some bridges have been downgraded or put out of commission as a result of that report, and this, I'm sure, flows right out of that. So it would be worthwhile, for the sake of everybody and those folks who are new to council as well, to see that report again, and that might give us a sense of why some of this is happening. Right, so if there's nothing further on bridges and culverts, why don't we move on then to streetlights? Amanda, do you have any comments on that?
Sure. So the trans poles are what's being replaced by Westerio, and this is our part of the contribution. They believe this is the last year.
Is it the last year of the pole trans conversions? Oh my God. That's occupied a significant part of my life, it feels like. All right. So, any comments with regard to the streetlight replacements? No? Okay. How about traffic signals and controls? The Deputy Mayor? I'm moving on to traffic signals and controls. Did you have a comment on streetlights? So why don't we, Amanda's traffic signals and controls?
Sure. So the only comment is Ivans Dries had been identified for this year for reconstruction to bring it up to AOD standards, but we've done 2 traffic impact studies on this intersection already, and we continue to hear the requirement to put in a left turn lane. We need a report that justifies that before we can get MTO to allow that change. It also is the last intersection in Port Elgin that needs that agreement to be updated with MTO. So we're going to hire a consultant to do that this year so that we get it all in place. And if that report comes back warranting a left turn lane, then we will update the construction for 2020 to include that. If it comes back again and still isn't warranted, then council will have that knowledge from that professional.
Okay. Questions or comments on traffic signals and controls? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, this one has been discussed for the last 4 years through the previous council. I understand that I don't understand why we need a a consultant for this one. I believe this is a slam dunk. We know that we need a left turn lane. The amount of traffic that goes through there for Bruce Power and coming in and out of town, and as you said, Amanda, it is the last one to have it. Every other road has a left turn lane. I think this is just an automatic. Is there any way we can get around that and just have it changed?
Mr. Mayor, no, there is not. It's a legislated requirement to have these agreements with MTO.
I await the report, and if it comes back as saying we don't need it, then I believe that will be money not well used, but I look forward to it. How long will that take?
It doesn't take long for them to do it. What takes the time is getting the summer traffic here for that appropriate study. So we will wait for the summer traffic to be here to get those traffic counts to do this one.
I don't believe we need summer traffic. We have enough traffic right now.
That would be a risk that you would be willing to take to do springtime to have the lower traffic volumes on the highway. Then that is not advisable, but we could.
Thank you. No, I understand. Thank you.
This is a 2020 project if it's going to happen, right? I mean, if you're going to change the intersection, then it's not a project you're going to complete in 2019. This is an approvals year, doing the study. Then you got to get MTO approval to make the change, and only after that are you going to be able to construct. And probably we're waiting to do that anyway, right?
That's correct.
Councillor Smith.
Can you just validate an assumption through you, Mayor, that indeed the traffic study does factor in specific times of day where traffic flow is highest?
Sorry, when they're going to have the traffic counters out there, it may be that they're there 24 hours. That to me is ideal, that they would leave them there for 24 hours for 2 weeks.
Okay, I would just also, obviously there's been some additional infrastructure in the Tiverton area with 7 acres, as we've heard recently, but it might be, if we have any ability to choose the time frame, I would suggest that we do it during an outage at Bruce Power, if there's a possibility of catering that study to when we do see increased traffic flow at Bruce Power as well.
Thank you.
I think if you're tallying up your scorecards in terms of provincially imposed costs through regulation, here's another one that you can add to that list. Continue to add those up because it racks up to be a fairly significant number. Is there anything more on Councillor Mayette?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I was going to ask the same question that Deputy Mayor Matheson did with regards to the legitimacy of doing a study, because personally I've been doing a study on that intersection for the past 22 years, and I'm pretty convinced a left-hand turn signal is required. But so what I'm hearing is if it's determined by the study that in fact it warrants a left-hand turn and an advanced left going north, does that? I heard you say reconstruction. Are we planning on putting 2 lanes plus a center lane and reconstruct the whole intersection, or why can't we just conceptually duplicate what is at Market Street, which is just 2 lanes? One of them has a left and straight arrow, and one has a straight arrow.
Through traffic professionals will do a warrant assessment. They'll come back with what is required. So it is 2 different needs. If you have a common straight through left with an advanced green versus a dedicated left turn lane, that's what you see at Devonshire. The analysis that was done there was between which of those is required. So this traffic study will come back and say if a dedicated left turn lane is required, then we'll need to implement that. If they come back and say only the straight through left with an advanced green is warranted, then that's what we'll implement.
Presumably if there's a great deal of traffic turning left, they would say we need a dedicated lane. If there's a medium amount of left turn traffic, then all we need is a flashing straight through left turn.
That's correct. So they do it based on delay time, how many cars get through the intersection and how many are delayed and what that delay is, and then the level of service meets a grade. So what happens in larger cities is that grade is not met very quickly because there's that much more traffic. Up here it's harder to meet the deficient level of service because the volume of traffic just that is here is not there to reduce it or to see that. So that's where historically the problem is that it feels very bad for us up here because it's the worst intersection in town, but it still does not meet those level of services that are considered so poor that the MTO would encourage a left turn lane.
Right, so what I'm thinking though is if we did it during a long weekend with an outage on and everything else, it may come back and say, yeah, this warrants a complete reconstruction at a cost of $275,000. Whereas if we did it during a medium 2-week period, then they might say, oh, well, just a left-hand arrow and a flashing green would do the trick and save us a great deal of money.
I think the more important thing is to do it properly and to get the safety needs addressed. This is not for convenience. Left turn lanes are for safety. So the engineers that will be signing off on this will use peaking factors and analysis to ensure the solution is the right one for this place. And cost won't be a factor in that assessment.
All I see is this has been going on and on and on for 4 or 5 years, and it's just going to go on again. And people are going to say to me and us, why can't we do something here? But I guess that's the way it is.
I think it's important for council to remember that you can count on our professional staff inside our department as well as the professional engineers we're going to hire to properly design these intersections, and that it's best to leave that work to them, and that's how we're going to end up with the best results. The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Just wanted to thank Councillor Mayette for his comments, Councillor Matheson and Councillor Smith. This is a pet peeve of mine too. I regularly see people cut across that Circle K parking lot to avoid that left-hand turn there, and from a safety standpoint, I sure hope the study comes back for the 10 or 15,000 we're spending on it. This is, yes, let's do a left-hand turn there, because if it's one left-hand turn area, I hear constantly from members of the public is please put in a left-hand turn signal at Ivings Drive. Boy, as a council, we can't make that kind of decision. It's really unfortunate. Mr. Mayor, I echo your comment. This is another cost that's borne by the community down from the province. And the fact that we cannot make a decision to put a left-hand turn at Circle K just baffles me. So, anyways, I hope the results come back positive, because there's a left-hand turn signal recorded at Circle K corner.
Okay, why don't we move on then now to cemetery? Amanda, any comments on the cemetery?
So these 4 projects are just enhancing and completing the beautification of the 2 cemeteries, the replacement of the gates that were damaged. We're adding brickwork in front of the 2 columbariums that were installed this year, and our goal is the shed roof replacement, and we're looking at working with community services on tendering that one together.
So, comments on, let's go through them. Number 1, Sanctuary Park Cemetery Columbarium interlocking brick. Councillor Grace. Okay, well, we'll get there in a sec. How about the Southampton Columbarium interlocking brick? Any there? Councillor Grace, Southampton Cemetery Gates.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the damage of the gates, how did that happen?
It was just through maintenance. A piece of equipment hit the gates and the top came down.
Is that something do we have any insurance recovery on that?
We did look, but the premium for insurance is quite high, or that we would have to pay at the beginning, so we just felt that it's better to not make the claim than to do it this way.
Anything further on the gates? Then Sanctuary Park Cemetery shed roof replacement. Don't see anything there. So that brings us to the end of cemetery, and we can move on into then 5.7, water and sewer. Amanda.
Sorry. Water and sewer projects are typically done through Aqua, and these are the pieces that are capital that get done at the plants, and some of it is through the distribution system as well. So the hydrant, they're like annual programs. They're in the financial plan as these are the years for these things to be replaced.
Okay, so we have 12 items there. We'll just go through them, beginning with the Southampton Water Pollution Control Plant. Any questions on that item? I don't see any. The Sanitary Sewer Condition Survey. Any questions or comments on the condition survey? Any Port Elgin Water Pollution Control Plant. Questions on that project? Councillor Schreiber.
Thank you. Through you, I guess just over in general then with with regards to these projects because they list as various projects. So when we own the assets within that building, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then Aqua provides the forecast of the equipment replacement program. They drive that, I assume?
That's correct. So they work with our manager of environmental service to do that. Right now, you'll see in the next couple of months the updated water financial plan that shows that capital program coming through.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further on the water pollution control plant? Then how about the sanitary sewer replacement in Port Elgin Alley? Anything there? Port Elgin turbo blower upgrade. On that one, Southampton sewage pumping stations capacity study. Nothing. The Southampton water treatment plant project. Comments? The xenon membrane expansion modules.
May I just offer
Yep.
one thing? So the
You bet.
xenon membrane expansion models, these are something that you'll hear when we come to the water bans and those things. So there's two projects on here. One is to replace some of the older ones, which will allow more water to flow through, and the other one is the expansion. The expansion ones are the ones that are paid for by development charges, so they allow more membranes to go in. So again, these are the ones that we're putting in year by year that are accommodating for that growth that we see in our town.
Are we planning a tour for members of council of the Southampton water treatment plant? I think getting some understanding of, because there's a lot of excess capacity or room for additional capacity in the Port Elgin, or pardon me, in the Southampton water treatment plant. We can add, a significant number of new membranes to expand our treatment capacity there, and it would be good for members of council to see that capacity and understand maybe a little bit more about how the plant was built, anticipating future growth.
Yep, for sure. We'll do that tour. Linda and I are working together to find a suitable time.
Excellent. The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Mayor Amanda, when I read 2019 expansion, we'll see the purchase of 108 membrane modules, bring the total membrane population from 615 to 723 out of a possible 864. My calculation is, I think it's 85-86% capacity. When you take a look at that number, what does that number look like from a population standpoint? What are we able to build out? How many years are we looking? I think we're scheduled to go to 17,000, 18,000 by 2028 or 29. Charges numbers, I think that's the number. So what does that 80%, 86%, what population does that gross out to?
I don't know the population number off by hand, but the master plan, the water wastewater master plan, is what drives this. And I know that as we're monitoring that, our population is below where that master plan thought we would be this year, and we're still in line with where we're expanding the modules. So we're keeping up with population on these expansions by doing this. This year, that master plan again is up for renewal, so they'll be looking at it again, taking the next set of growth forecasts, and then looking at where the expansion needs to be for that. We do own land beside the water plant, and when the plant was built, there's always been that ability to expand for that next 30 years as well.
In good shape.
Mm-hmm.
Any further comments on either the expansion or replacement of the modules? Anything there? How about distribution capacity, flow, and energy study? Questions or comments? Don't see anything. How about the Railway Street water service replacements? Anything on Railway Street? No comments. And the last one, hydrant replacements. Any questions on the hydrant replacements? Don't see anything. All right, so that's water and wastewater. Then we can move on to 5.8 parking. Is there any comments on, there's no capital projects in parking. Is there any comments there, Amanda? No? Then why don't we, I guess I can just ask other questions from members. Councillor Mayette?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It wouldn't feel right going through a budget without mentioning that we are the last community on the shore that does not have any sort of paid parking in town. And I agree that our in-town parking lots that are used for patrons using our stores and restaurants should remain the way they are, but with the ever-increasing influx of tourists to the town and the ever-increasing budgets that we spend on infrastructure at our waterfronts, I would once again call for some input as to a conceptual idea of putting paid parking of some sort. I know that our neighbors just to the north at Sauble Beach make a tremendous amount of money off of parking, and I would say that the technology has increased to the point now where it's reasonably easy to do. You don't have to put meters on posts and put quarters in. They have electronic systems, and most of the people that come to our town from any of the urban centers to the south, they're used to this. Everywhere they go, there's paid parking, and I think this is a revenue source that we need to, at some point in time, get our heads around. Thank you.
Other comments on parking? The Vice Deputy Mayor?
It's just a time to talk about land acquisition. I know we can't name properties, and I get that, but are we talking about land acquisition and lot expansion right now? Is that where we're at? Can I just ask a question in that area?
You can ask a question you're asking a question with regard to the future capital forecast?
Maybe I'm on the wrong page. I'm talking about land acquisition and your parking. Amanda, when we talk about Port Elgin parking lot expansion, 20,000, are we talking about our Port Elgin parking lot beside the ambulance service? Is that what we're talking about?
There are no parcels identified in this. This was a development charges forecast that this is when we would need parking property, so we don't know where we would buy it or what we would expand. It's just budgeting to know that in these years we believe that more parking will be required in Port Elgin and Southampton. So there's no specific locations.
I know it's 2020, but so that Port Elgin parking lot across from the old Port Elgin Arena, that I classify as Port Elgin parking lot, but that's not necessarily we're not expanding that for that 20,000. That's not what we're talking about.
We don't know what we're talking about yet.
Okay.
Those numbers are yet, and we will eventually.
Yeah.
Those numbers are based on the development charges study, and so that's what's driving the timing and that's what you were indicating there.
That's correct. And my understanding is that they believe there's going to be so much growth that you're going to need a new parking lot downtown or somewhere in Port Elgin. It may be at the waterfront. We'll do that parking assessment, but the expansion is if there's existing ones that can be expanded, then that's where the money would be spent.
Sure. Thanks.
The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Man, if you can just, I kind of get what you're saying. So the Southampton parking lot expansion, I don't know where there is a parking lot in Southampton, but there could be a parking lot in Southampton, whether it's at the beach or down at the Cenotaph. We're just putting money in to be able to accommodate and fix it, correct? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. It could even be on-street parking. Like maybe this expansion could mean on some street where there isn't paved boulevards for parking. That could be an example of expansion. So it could be anything where you want to make it
anything anywhere. It's related to parking in town.
That's right. And so what we'll do is part of the Transportation Master Plan, they're looking at parking and they're going to make recommendations. And if that's not enough, then we would come back and ask for a more specific parking strategy to come out from a different consultant. But we're looking at the Transportation Master Plan as sort of guiding us as to where we believe these parking lots should come. And then from that, we'll bring back proposed projects.
Okay. Just the word lot threw me off. I'm going, where's the parking lot in Southampton? So it's just parking spaces to be looked at. Thank you very much.
More to come in a year's time on that, by the sounds of things. All right. So why don't we then move on to waste management? And Amanda, comments on waste management?
There's just two. So the first is the Boy Scout compost, and I don't know if you've been there recently to see the work that was done this year, but it's looking great, and this is just expanding on that and making sure that the residents know where they need to go and how to properly use that service. The second one, the entrance, is we had put money aside this year. We started looking at fencing and security and that in the landfill, and we're looking at now as more of a whole picture, trying to figure out a better way to get that to work. We have issues with residents overfilling the blue boxes when the site is closed, and so we're trying to get a holistic approach on how we're going to use the entrance combined with last year's project.
Yeah, that's good. So we got the two projects, and we'll start with the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Brandon, kudos to you and your staff. This is a great project. What is the turnover time from drop-off to compost takeout? So we have the different bays there now. and you rotate the compost in there, what's the turnover time what do we do with it once it's in there? Does that, do we pile it and town people can take it out, or is like the shavings you have when you grind up the trees? What do we do with the compost?
We use it as daily cover on the landfill.
Okay, so it's town use?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Amanda, I just want to, as a regular user of the leaf and yard waste, leaf depot, I should say, I just want to thank you and your staff, and whether it's Adam or Peter Nechtel, or I'm not sure who was involved with reshaping that whole leaf depot area, but it is really remarkable, the work they've done out there. And I don't know how much was invested in that area with all those big blocks and so on and so forth, but you did a really, really good job. And I know people that drop leaves off out there are pretty happy with that facility. So thanks for your good work, Adam. Thanks.
Thanks for those comments. And are there any other questions or comments with regard to either of those capital projects in waste management? It was good to hear too that comment that you made about with regard to the entrance reconfiguration and fixing the recycling situation. I've been there a few times myself, watching people sort of try to scale the fence when it's closed to put things in the blue box, and it's awkward and difficult. And I understand why it's configured the way it is now. It's just would be great to see a new configuration here that makes that a little easier. So that's a great project. So there's nothing further on waste management. Then we'll move on to administration, and we thank the Director of Infrastructure and Development, and we'll move then on to the Director of Corporate Services.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Under the administration, we have our office furniture and improvements. This is sort of an annual budget that we have every year. It fluctuates year as to how much gets used, so it's just a standard annualized capital budget.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments with regard to the office furniture capital item? Don't see anything, so let's go on to information technology.
So under the information technology, there are two projects this year. One is replacement computers. This is another annual operating budget that OSCR uses to replace our computers and IT requirements during the year. The next one is a further enhancement or expansion. Last year, there was a budget approval for $50,000 for a payroll system. This year, we're asking for another $50,000 to also include an HRIS system, so on human resources information system, which will allow us to track employee and labor data and allow for more analysis of it, and hopefully not just process payroll, but provide time tracking as well. So more electronic use of our funds.
Vice Deputy Mayor.
Sue, I think it's a great use of funds and make things more efficient. Are you you've been in consultation with other municipalities where this similar system is being used, and it's with a lot of success?
Yes, I have had Brockton recently implemented a payroll system, so I sort of reached out to them to get a feel for what their cost was. I did do some very general reach outs to other payroll companies just to get a basic cost and just to give us an estimate going forward.
And again, managed by existing staff?
Yes.
Correct.
Councilor Smith.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, just a similar question to what was asked of the engineering software. Looking at a total cost of ownership associated with this software package, are we looking at an annual licensing fee?
Yes, so I suspect I did sort of budget and estimate around a $15,000 likely ongoing extra operational cost for licensing annual fees. It depends what type of system you go with as to what type of fee, but I figured around $15,000 based on my initial.
And was that included in our operational budget for?
Not for this year. I think it'll hit next year's budget.
Okay, sorry, I do have a couple of follow-up questions on this one. Is there any integration with this piece of software in terms of HR to our existing financial software, or are you intending to purchase a module within the same?
No, Keystone, our current accounting software, does not have payroll. We do right now export from one into the other, so that will be one of our requirements of the new software, is that it has that capability. All we really need it to do is to offer a Excel or a CSV file, and we can import it into our.
Okay, so there's no built-in integration. It's just they need to be able to talk to one another. Okay, and then my last question, in the operating budget, we talked about an additional FTE associated with payroll. So I'm seeing now, and we talked earlier in the engineering piece about how sometimes software can enhance or make things more efficient. We've previously discussed the allocation of additional resource, but now we're talking about software to make the payroll purposes more efficient. Can you just maybe walk us through, is it the intent that the new FTE will facilitate the role within the software, not that the software will facilitate the role that the FTE is now doing?
Yeah, so it's a combination of our existing staff person who does payroll has workload is too much for just one person anymore, so the new position will be sort of half providing HR support, payroll, benefits administration, possibly, and actually do the payroll processing.
Further questions on either of those items? Just the one, it's important to note in that the considerations in that currently timesheet data is manually entered by the employee, by department, and then by the finance department before employees can be paid. This is a $30+ million business, and growing. It's a big operation, and these kind of improvements are the kind of things that you need to do to run a business of this size. And so it's really high time we made some of these efficiency-related improvements to make the flow of this kind of information and work better and pay our employees more efficiently. So absolutely an essential investment as far as I'm concerned. So if there's nothing further out of those, we'll say thank you then to Sue. That's easy, boy. You lined that up to get the easy job. Anyway, we'll move on to the Director of Protective Services, and he will begin to take us through fire.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our capital program this year is minimal, and I have 3 projects to discuss with you.
Okay, good. So we'll talk about fire then. We have the 2 items there. So we'll start with the personal protective equipment replacement. Any questions or comments with regard to that? Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to the Director, the Chief. That's not the whole complement. You must replace certain bunker gear at certain intervals, because I'm sure that's only 2 or 3 outfits, isn't it?
No, it's several more than that, but it is helmet, boots, bunker coats, gloves, balaclava to outfit our new firefighters we're bringing on this year, as well as about a third of our existing firefighters. The ensemble is very, very expensive, and we're regulated to replace it every 10 years. Even if it's still in good shape and we've looked after it in every way, it has a service life of 10 years, and that's what we're replacing for the most part, is gear that's served us for 10 years and needs to be replaced.
Further questions with regard to the PPE replacement? Don't see anything there, so how about heating systems for fire halls 50 and 60? Questions or comments? Don't see any. Oh, Councillor Smith.
Sorry, I just have a question through you, Mayor. There is mention in this that there's been significant investment, I believe, year over year. However, just if we refer back to the operational budget, there's a line item there for building equipment replacement that has been underspent in the last 2 years. Is that something that, are we maintaining this, or maybe?
Yes. So okay. We are on track to meet that budget this year in 2018, and those funds are spent. The operating costs don't cover a large project like this. This is a capital project.
Further, Councillor Schreier.
Thank you. Through you, will this be done through your current service provider?
No, it'll be a tender process, and we will look to solutions from the vendors.
Perfect. And I guess just maybe a comment more than anything else, but there's some great rebates and incentive programs out there through Hydro One, Union Gas, and all of those. So if those could be explored when we're doing any type of equipment upgrade, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll look to those for more energy efficient. The tube heaters that are in place are almost 20 years old, and they've just they're not the efficiency. But it's all, this project is also about air movement, and the tube heaters are very stagnant, very warm on one side of the hall and ice cold on the other. And this will move air, dry the PPE, the bunker gear better, and circulate air more efficiently.
The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Just before we let you go, Phil, I just wanted to say, you're running a really good, solid ship with our fire services in particular. I know of a community not far away from here is a budget of in excess of $3 million, and I think our budget's around 800 or 850 or something like that. I think that's the number from operations, but we're a pretty efficient department, and I just wanted to say thank you to you and the volunteer firefighters. You guys, I mean, you really, and ladies, I guess, but you have a few females on staff. So, ladies and gents, I just think you do a remarkable job for the budget dollars we spend on fire services. Compared to other municipalities, it's pretty efficient. So, thanks for your great work.
Very good. So why don't we then move on to 8.2, building. Any comments on that one to lead us in, Phil?
This project has been a long time coming, and council has seen some requests for different softwares, and I think the common theme across the softwares are to increase staff efficiency. This is going to increase the efficiency of how we process building permits, but also we believe the customer will really like the process. They'll be involved in it. They'll be able to see where their permits are throughout as the permit processes, and there'll be real-time instant updates on when our inspections are done. So this is going to be, we feel, very much appreciated by the building community, but it also increased efficiencies in our department. And we're looking at a couple of different models right now for 2019.
Good. Are there any questions from members with regard to the one item under building services? I think it's just to reiterate what you just said, Chief. I think that ultimate goal, paperless permits, for people being able to monitor their permits online. I mean, these are things that people are coming to expect as in 2019, and it's something that we're working on being able to deliver. It's also going to make managing the department easier, I think. So, yeah, just a great concept. Looking forward to seeing that move forward. There's nothing further on building. We're very close to the end of the formal budget, so we might just work our way through to the end before lunch, and so we'll come to police service, and maybe we'll turn it over to the Chief of Police.
Thank you. There's just the one ask this year. Just as a point there, you'll see in 2021 we actually have that $35,000. We were successful in getting a grant this year, so we'll actually end up removing that. So we're not going to need that. We'll be able to roll that out this year. So it's kind of a good news story. And the only thing we're asking for this year is a new computer-aided dispatch system, CAD system, work alongside our niche and RMS system.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions from members? Councillor Smith.
Yes, and through you, Mayor, is this just for a single unit or an additional unit to existing infrastructure?
It's to existing infrastructure, so it'll integrate with our niche and RMS system, and it goes into all of our mobile workstations within the cruisers. There's 6 different mobile workstations, and then it will also be on our laptops, our desktops in the station as well.
So this is a tool that we currently are not using?
Yes, we do not have it now.
Excellent. Okay, I wholeheartedly support this. I spoke to some colleagues in the industry, which this is widely used elsewhere, so I would encourage that this is absolutely necessary.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the Chief? No? Okay, thank you, Chief. Then move on to item 10, fleet, and back to the Director of Protective Services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've given Council a very brief narrative of the next 5 years. We are preparing a more detailed summary, and our biggest goal there is to look for efficiencies. I will speak to the successes that a committee representing all the 3 major departments, vehicle-using departments, equally have had some real successes this year in finding some efficiencies, and we will be highlighting that to council very shortly. The asks this year, as you can see, are minimal. We're actually putting more resources into the fleet reserve than we are drawing from the fleet reserve this year in an effort to close the deficit in that fleet reserve. I can speak to each project individually or just answer questions.
We'll just go through them. If there's questions, we'll address them. So you see the list there. The first one, backhoe replacement. Any questions with regard to the backhoe replacement? The Councillor Blant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not necessarily to the backhoe, but overall, is there any is it factored in here any of the investment recovery options and how we recoup funds for retiring and selling old equipment?
Yes, but it's not reflective in the purchase value. We've always taken the approach that it's total cost value of the replacement, and we've had some success in recovering costs from vehicles we've sold or traded in, but that goes directly back into the fleet reserve. So the numbers that are quoted are total cost worst case scenario for the replacement of that vehicle. It's really hard to accurately assess the market a whole year in advance type thing, and we do have good success in recovering costs of our existing equipment, but it goes directly into the fleet reserve on the year that it's sold. Occasionally we will purchase a replacement late in this year, and it'll be sold in the spring of the following year, the existing one that it replaces.
Yes, there's trade-in values as well, right?
Correct, depending on the piece of equipment and the age, and we work with vendors to assess whether it's better to trade it in or sell it ourselves. And there's an online auction site that we've had tremendous success in retailing the products ourselves. I think today we have 7 or 8 assets online on that auction. It's a North American-wide auction, and we've had really good success there.
Anything further on the backhoe? Councillor Schreier.
Sorry, through you, and just in general, not on this specific piece of equipment, but Phil, for the reserves, when we're setting that up, and I know that you had talked about contributing towards them, and we're contributing a little bit more this year in order to get kind of caught up, I guess I'll say. So when you purchase, I guess the intent is that when you purchase a piece of equipment like this for $150,000, is that in order to replenish those reserves for that specific piece of equipment, do you look at, if the life cycle is 10 years, then you would contribute $15,000 for that one piece of equipment and put that into the reserve for all of the fleet that we have, or is it lump sums that we're just putting in annually?
It's one bucket, if that's answering the question. The fleet reserve is designed now to accommodate all rolling assets for the town, police included, and we draw from that. And that smooths out the dips and the peaks in that fleet reserve. The backhoe, for example, it won't get replaced for another 10 years. So we'll put everything we can into it, but we don't assign individual pieces of equipment a reserve.
I think it's a great program that you have. I'm looking forward to seeing the entire layout for sure. These are big assets that we have through the municipality. So great job.
CAO.
Yeah, I just want to comment. This is the first year, so Phil and senior management team and staff members have put a lot of effort into developing a fleet strategy. Councillor Smith asked at our operating budget about that, and it is something that we'll be bringing back in totality to council. As Amanda mentioned with one of her projects, these big items, complicated items, we'll bring back and present as standalone throughout the year, and this is the first time that our fleet has been integrated as such, and it's exciting to see because it is a very large investment in our community.
Okay, so we'll move on then. I'm just going to go through them quickly, but you can ask any questions you like. There's the 1,500 4x4 pickup truck replacements. Any questions? See any? How about line painting machine? Questions there. The transit van replacement. Questions on that. The 4,000 gallon water tanker. Questions on that? And finally, the police cruisers and unmarked detective vehicles. Vice Deputy Mayor.
This is you to the chief. Chief, for the, I see the pictures of the truck here, and unmarked SUV or pickup trucks. But yeah, okay. I'm just looking right in my picture here too. Is this something that what's the reasoning behind the shift in the SUV pickup truck versus standard cars? Is this something happening around the province more you're seeing, and is it kind of the shift in where we're heading with police vehicles?
Yeah, it's popular down in the States, and it's migrated up north here to Canada. And the thing here locally is the weather that we get here and that type of thing. The pickup trucks, they're better for our climate, for our officers to get the calls. Plus, what we're doing with in conjunction with the fleet is now those vehicles will be moved when we're done with them. Then they'll be moved into different areas within the town for building or whatever. So we're getting much more life out of the vehicle instead of us using them for 3 or 4 or 5 years and then they're just finished. Now we can get an extended life, an additional 10 years out of those vehicles.
The officer response is favorable.
Yeah, they'd like all pickup trucks, but eventually we'll get there. They really do like them. Yeah.
And that really will reflect a very significant savings over the years because of that strategy. You really just lift the decals off those trucks. You notice the color of them. You can pull those decals off. They're white trucks. They become Saugeen Shores Public Works or Community Services vehicles. And the long term, when you play out the cost savings through the fleet reserve, it's really significant. So it was a great move, and it's a heck of a lot easier to put a bike in the back of a truck than it is to put a bike in the back of a sedan. So it's was smart in that regard too.
And just if I may, just to add, we get it's called a PCPG program, which is a police cooperative purchasing group. So we get quite a reduction in the cost of that vehicle at the front end. We're not paying what you would normally pay on a lot. We pay about $20,000 less per vehicle. Other efficiency.
Any further questions on police cruisers, unmarked detective vehicles? See any? So okay, that pulls us right into noon, which is pretty good. So we'll break now for lunch. We'll come back and deal with the council requests, and we'll have, I'm sure, some discussion around the conclusion after lunch.
The wrong diamond. This is the main diamond.
This is the main diamond? I thought you were talking about back.
No, this is the main diamond, right field along Palmerston Street.
Oh, I see. I see.
No, the back diamonds.
Okay. Well, thanks.
This is the right field from center to right along Palmerston.
All right. Thank you for that clarification. That helps everybody. I still oppose the expenditure because we're spending lots of money on baseball, but that's just my view. So you know my vote. Is there any other comments? So I'll ask all in favor. 1, 2, 3. All opposed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's defeated. Okay, so that moves us then on to North Shore beautification. I didn't see an indication this one who it came from. I guess I just asked members if there's any comments. Maybe the member who's here, the Vice Deputy Mayor.
Jane, in your budget earlier today, you talked about $55,000 for waterfront landscaping. Is the $55,000 over and above this, or are we talking the same thing? I saw a $55,000 figure earlier.
Yeah, that was in the capital presentation, and that's for beautification along the service dock, along where we gas our boats up. So there's a trail entrance there. You will recognize it as a spot where there's a lot of individuals park there, fishermen park there. We want to beautify that area.
2 different projects.
Yeah.
These are 2 different things.
Yes.
So this is with regard to beautification work, just in general at North Shore Park. Yeah. So I'll just ask members: are there any other comments to this? Would be a $20,000 tax levy expenditure. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, I'll be going against this beautification part. We still have the trail to be fixed up, and I think this is something that can be deferred to a later time. We're doing a lot of work on the waterfront in Port Elgin, and let's get the trail fixed up and go from there.
Thank you. Further comments from members? I'll ask all in favor of the additional $20,000 to tax levy for North Shore Park beautification. Opposed? That's defeated. So that moves us then on to streetlights, and in response to requests from Saugeen Shores residents, particularly in the areas of north of Saugeen Beach Road, just north of Concession 4 and Huron Street South, south of South Street to Miramichi Bay Road, that staff proceed with inspecting overhead street lighting throughout Saugeen Shores to determine where additional lighting is required to be budgeted. So just to be very clear on this one, this is expenditure to tax levy, an unknown expenditure to tax levy, to proceed with inspecting overhead street lighting across the municipality to determine where additional lighting may be required. Do you have a comment to that, the Director of Development and Infrastructure?
I do through. So this was something that came up at the operations budget, and it's something that is included in the operations budget moving forward. I don't believe it's required as an additional request. We're going to have this done. If council wishes, through the year, we can look to hire a consultant to do photometric analysis of the town, but I don't at this time believe it to be necessary.
Okay. Comments?
Mr. Mayor, I just think this is a great thing to do, and we'll be seeing the report anyways. I know there's some opposition to some overhead lighting being put in certain sections, and that's fine. But I've had similar requests to have lighting, so I think it's a good idea to do the report, bring it back to council, and certainly some input at that point once the report's completed.
Report, just to be clear, the report is already going to be undertaken as part of the operations budget. Is that what you were suggesting, Amanda?
So my understanding is we're going to take the service requests where these areas have been identified, go out and analyze whether or not they need to have a light. Where the difference is that normally a service request would just then be cleared with that resident, but instead we're going to bring this spot, and there's another one in Port Elgin, back to council for their information. Okay. So just an information report.
So we'll come back. Councillor Grayson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The section identified here, Huron Street, the section south of South Street to Miramichi Bay Road, that south of South Street is called Miramichi Bay Road. It's not Huron. I wasn't clear if this was also a request for Huron, but I've heard, since I sent this out and saw this in the materials, I sent it out to people I knew in that area. I have 13 responses that are very negative about the idea of putting lighting along that Miramichi Bay Road. Basically, I asked people to the first turn where you see the lake. I had one person who said they thought it would be a good idea farther on, perhaps in Miramichi, where there are large bends, but I didn't talk to anybody in the Saugeen Beach Road area, but everybody else was absolutely opposed to it.
Sounds like we're gonna get those areas in particular are going to get looked at, but the reports are going to come back to council, and we'll be able to make decisions as to whether or not we're going to proceed with anything at all there or not. So the opportunity to hear from those residents will be there, and we'll get to make those. So it doesn't sound like any action on this would add much to what's already underway. So I guess I'll just ask I'll ask members, just to be clear, is there all those in favor of additional street lighting work as suggested in this request? Well, for anything additional to what is already in the operating budget, this is kind of a tough one because we don't even know how much money we're spending here. It sounds like we've already got an operating expenditure lined up to take care of this work. So we don't need to. We're going to get this. We don't need to spend any additional money. So the question is, do you want to spend more on something else? And so, Mike, I guess I'm asking you all in favor of spending more on something else. All opposed to that? All right, that's defeated. Now, that moves us on to Boys at Bay Street section. And this is from the Deputy Mayor, so maybe we'll ask the Deputy Mayor for comments on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the increased high water levels, the length of the beach is being stretched out and we have a fair number of people coming down to the end of Bay Street, which is what the water treatment plant. Our staff put buoys at the north end of the lake on Jerry's on the Long Dock south side, which has stopped the water boat traffic from coming in and ensuring that the people swimming are safe. However, now down at the water plant, we have a large number of people who are going down there to swim. The trailer park entrance is there in Bay Street, and we have problems with boats coming in and safety levels. So they've requested a couple buoys be put in to help monitor this and for protection. So we're not looking at a lot. I know it's a lot of work. I've talked with Frank. If staff can handle this, this would be great, but it does add to the safety and enjoyment of our waterfront.
Okay, there you have it. Was there an idea, Don, of how many of these buoys? It's $500 per buoy. I just wanted like an idea of what kind of capital spend we're actually asking for here. Maybe Jane?
Currently, we have 5 buoys in Jerry's Fry's vicinity and Gobles Grove vicinity. Now, the $500 is based on the existing buoys that we have in those areas. I can tell you they're not sufficient. We regularly get phone calls in those areas. Due to high winds, they wash to shore, and we have to drop everything and go relocate them. It's not an ideal system that we have right now, and I think if it's an issue with boats getting close to shore, it's an OPP marine issue that we need to have a conversation with them to get them on board to patrol that area more often.
Okay. Further comments? Councillor Grace?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really think we need more control over boats coming in. I got a lot of complaints from residents over this summer for the South Street beach as well with regard to this, and requests for more buoys being put in there, or some kind of control to keep the watercraft out of that area. And I think the more we put down, then people are going to shift their boats down to South Street, and so I really ask for something to be done so that we can try to monitor this, keep the boats from coming in close to shore.
And the question is, what is the solution? But the difficulty the directors identified is this is maybe not an ideal solution, since it's very difficult and bad weather moves the buoys around. So that's a question. That would be a question to look at: is what are potential other solutions? Are there other buoy systems that are more that we can set up that are maybe more difficult to set up but stay in place, or other concepts? I don't know, but that's the dilemma we face. The deputy mayor.
That is the million-dollar question, Mr. Mayor. The problem with having to wait for the OPP is they have the whole lake to patrol. Something happens, we're waiting 1-2 hours. I know it's a pain for the staff to have to do this, but if we could place 3 buoys at Bay Street and 3 buoys at South Street, that would deter the traffic, save the people, and limit any boater and swimmer interaction.
Mayor, these are a maintenance nightmare. I drive by them regularly at Gobles Grove, and they're constantly with wave action being moved into shore. And I don't know whether they've ever watched staff member hand bomb those things off of a float or not, but Michael Hunt's one of them that works on it. And you know, until we come up with a better system, Jane, like I'm concerned about the weight of those things. Trying to hand bomb those off of a float into the water, unless you've changed it since I saw it. Do you have a winch now? Is there anything? Are they still hand bombing? Like it's not a good system, and I am concerned about safety of employees. And I think until we get a better system in place to put those buoys in place, they don't hold their ground. With the first wave action, they're washed into shore, and so I don't know. Staff are feeling about them. We did explain, Jane, but they're it's not an easy install. So I'm not reluctantly not going to support it, Donnie, because I just think we don't have the proper, until we get the proper equipment in place. I think we really do need to find a system, a better system, if we're going to use buoys to help staff, some kind of a lift to put them in and take them in and out. So
yeah, to get us on track. I mean, the director or the administration has written, an enhanced system should be developed prior to adding to the complement of boys. And perhaps we could ask the administration to come back to tell us what they need from us to develop the enhanced system. And that might be the step that we should take. If it requires some capital investment, perhaps, or some money or support in other ways to do that, then that would be a good direction, perhaps, from us today. Councillor Rich?
No, the only thing I was going to add is obviously it's going to, if you put them there, then they're going to continue to grow. It's going to have to be at almost every beach, which could be a great thing. Is that the kind of thing we could refer to the Waterfront Committee, or is that not? That was my only real question.
At this moment, we don't have a Waterfront Committee, and we're reconsidering the structure of those committees. But I would say, I would suggest what council were to do today would be to give direction to staff to research or to come back to us with recommendations on an enhanced system for adding to the complement of boys, and to come back to us with some recommendations on that front. Is that reasonable from your perspective, Jane?
Yes, certainly we can do that.
So I guess, Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in terms of a timeline, is that something that we could feasibly do before the summer season?
We as staff can investigate it, and we can bring back to you a cost for that preferred method.
The Director of Protective Services.
Yeah, and I'd just like to remind council before we get too far down this road that these are navigable waters, and we have no authority to enforce where the boat traffic is in these areas. The only place we do have authority as a municipality to enforce is the Port Elgin Main Beach, and it has been very successful over the years as it was designated back in the 80s, I believe. So we do have some authority there to keep boat traffic out. The other areas, as a municipality, we have no authority to tell boats where they can go. It's all navigable waters.
Okay, but are there restrictions on us placing buoys?
There's simply a courtesy, and if council.
It's not regulated though by another level of government. We can place them at our discretion.
That is correct.
Okay. Yes.
Just a last comment, if I could. One more comment. These are a deterrent. It's not that I disagree with Deputy Mayor. I think buoys are a good thing from a deterrent standpoint. I just think that one line Jane put in there in her comment was about the, enhanced system. And so I look forward to seeing that report, Jane. See what that enhanced system looks like and the cost. And I'm not denying it. They're a bad thing. They are a good thing because they do deter people from coming into shore with machines. So.
Can I ask Council for a show of hands on giving direction to the administration to return with recommendations for an enhanced system of deploying buoys to deter boat traffic? Can I ask all in favor of that, giving that direction? That is carried then. Okay, so that's what we're going to do with that one. So then, bird silhouette in streetlights. This one is from me. It's a small cost, but initially when we built the streetlights in downtown Port Elgin, these bird silhouettes were going to cost $40,000 or some $30,000, some ridiculous amount of money. So it got kiboshed for good reason, because that was too much money to pay for them. But through some outstanding work, really, from staff in the Department of Development and Infrastructure, they've found a local contractor who can build these things for $3,000, and we can install them. It's a small feature, but I think would be a nice addition, and was what was always intended to be there. And so the project is really at this stage only partially complete. So it's a small amount of money, like I say, and I'd ask council to support adding it. Ask any discussion from members, the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is that something that the BIA could do?
Possibly so, although it would be up to the BIA.
No, well, with them, they'll be forming a new executive later this week or early next week. Sorry, and downtown beautification is part of their purview, so I think that is something maybe we could wait and ask if that's something they can fit into their new budget.
And we'll, I guess if council chooses not to spend the money here today, then certainly that would be another option. Any further discussion on this one? Just ask then, all in favor of adding this $3,000 for the bird silhouette? 2, keep your hands up, please. 1, 2, 5, opposed. 2, 3, that's carried. So, that moves us then on to the interlocking brick on High Street, and so I'll just read this. This is a request to remove the need to cut grass and improve the aesthetic. To replace the grass boulevard bump outs with interlocking brick. And so I'll ask members, the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a former member of the Southampton BIA, this was one of our first major projects. It is still in the process of being completed. I know that they wanted to have some aspects fixed, such as the edges of the bump outs were straight, which causes problems for cyclists. If they ride into it, it's bam, it's hard. The middle bump out itself we thought should probably be removed because it served no purpose. It blocked more traffic coming in and out of the driveways that are right there. As far as the brick, I think this BIA prior wanted to have the corners rounded more, especially at High Street and Grosvenor for traffic continuity, just like a roundabout, so that if a big vehicle needed to turn the corner, it had that little extra curve way, and it would make it more appealing. So I'm not sure how to go on this one. This was a Southampton BIA project. They have money left in the budget for, I believe if I ask or Amanda, we talked about improving this one with the BIA, did we not? Fixing it? Do you remember?
I'm not sure what you mean, but there was budgeted money in 2018 to do the next block that we didn't spend last year. Is that what you're referring to?
Well, there was that, and they wanted to fix the first block. So I'm not sure how to go on this. I believe that we need to fix the curve part of it, take it out, and then add the bricking. But I thought that was part of the Southampton BIA's budget.
Okay, Councillor Rich.
Right, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think I'd be in favor of certainly deferring this idea until after the new group and the BIA meets together. Personally, when I was campaigning in Southampton, I heard a lot of mixed reviews about where the bump outs were and how people felt about them. I'd like to see the first meeting of that group maybe come up with a little bit more direction on how the beautification of downtown Southampton happens before we get into another $55,000 project.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would also approve with going on the deferral route on this particular expenditure. It's my understanding that the Southampton BIA has plans to contract the services of a streetscape design firm, and they're going to be making a presentation on that. Perhaps they have some ideas on that as well. Will our transportation master plan be taking this into consideration?
Mr. Mayor, no, it won't be talking about the streetscape on High Street specifically.
I would make the suggestion that, as you have pointed out, and as you know, the 2018 project was deferred. There's money remaining. What is it? How much money is remaining? $100 and some odd thousand that was not spent. We're now re-entering a new consultation on the downtown Southampton streetscape. My anticipation, given the reaction to the bump outs, is that that project will be scaled back from what was originally planned, and that there will therefore be money left over from the 2018 project that could indeed finance this change if it was desired. So I think the idea of that the council could choose not to spend this $55,000 today as new taxation, but instead commit to the money we already have sitting in reserve, contributing that to streetscape improvements after we've had our consultations led by the director and determined what the path forward is. So I guess that would be the message I would say, is there's cash. We're sitting on cash. We're waiting to spend it, and some of these improvements can be funded that way. So I'll ask, in terms of this new funding, All in favor of the additional $55,000 to taxation for interlocking brick on High Street? Opposed? Beat it. So then, the last one, this one should be easy. Snyder Road. Anybody want to talk about that, or? Mike opposes doing any work on Snyder Road, I suspect, so we'll hear from him. The Vice Deputy Mayor.
I guess this was a request. I suppose I might have submitted this one. I've asked for the last week since I was elected 4 years ago. Snyder Road, in my view, and Amanda may differ with me on this one, I think it's the poorest condition road in Saugeen Shores, although there may be one or two others that are bad. But I appreciate this $20,000 being put into the budget. Get the work done this year and take a look, see what the cost may be for 2020 budget to get the road fixed. And so obviously we have to do the planning first. So I certainly would encourage council to endorse this one. If you talk to any of the residents on Snyder Road, it's a very poorly conditioned road.
The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have two options. We know the road is bad. In talking with Amanda, we know that we have to do a study to see what the condition of the road is, correct? What's underlying, what the base is. Yes.
Yes, through with any option, the first thing to do is to do a geotechnical investigation to see what's under that road.
So we know we have to fix the road. The question is, how do we go forward? Do we take part of one and part of two, or do we wait? We know it has to be fixed. Do we put the sanitary in at the same time as we're fixing the road? Do we connect it? Looking for your thoughts and guidance on this one, Mr. Mayor. What do you think?
I think that we know that a project to put sanitary sewers north of County Road 25, as Amanda has provided here, is a $6.1 million project. The only way that we could afford such a project would be through matching money from other levels of government. It's unlikely we've applied for that money and been denied. It's unlikely that we're going to receive that money. And even if a funding project does become available that could fund this, would this project be the council's priority? Given other priorities, it seems it seems less than likely, at least in the near term. My view is that sanitary, we should, at this stage, until circumstances change, until there's likely to be a large amount of funding, abandon the idea that we're going to put sanitary in these roads. In the near term, we should, but the roads need to be fixed. And what we've been doing is allowing them to degrade in hopes that we would get sanitary funding, which isn't coming. So we have to change course. We have to fund asphalt resurfacing alone. And that's an expensive enough proposition, frankly, in some of these roads because they're in bad shape and they're bad all the way down. But we need to do that work. And if the miracle comes and it happens in 2 years and suddenly we got $4 million from other levels of government, we're going to build the sanitaries, we'll have a little egg on our face and we'll rip the roads up, and it'll be a shame. But I think we got to move forward on fixing the roads, and I think that's the practical thing to do. They can't stay in this shape. This road, I'm sure all of you probably have driven it by now. My children love riding the road because it's like riding a roller coaster, and it needs to be fixed. It has to be fixed. So I say we spend the $20,000. We focus on asphalt resurfacing and fixing the underlying structure, and do Snyder and do as many of the surrounding roads as we can in some sort of plan over the coming years. So I would support the $20,000 and moving forward on that basis.
Another, just for information, Snyder Road comes up in the 10-year capital plan in 2021. So this would be the year we would start looking at pre-engineering for Snyder Road. So this is just a more expensive than normal piece to do. So it is in line with that capital plan.
So if there's no further discussion, we can look at the $20,000, option one, and ask all members, all those in favor of additional $20,000 for Snyder Street. That's carried. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the council and public requests. We added $23,000 to the budget. In that process, didn't need much of Sue's help. I could do that right in my head. So that will have a pretty minimal impact, frankly, on the overall budget. But I just ask members, I guess, we take a step back now, look at the whole document, revisit anything in here that you'd care to revisit. It is possible that by making a small referral to the police project, you could end up exactly where we started. I would also point out, though, as I said at the very beginning of this discussion, that this is a hold the line, zero increase to the tax support for capital, which is fine and sounds nice, but these assets are depreciating. The demands are not going to diminish; they're going to increase, and gradual increases to taxation to support capital over time, I think, is good planning. And so you could look at it from that perspective as well. Anyway, I guess I'd ask, just go around the table. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just go around the table and ask any members for their thoughts at this point. I'll start with the Vice Deputy Mayor.
Mayor, and I would like to see an item removed, and I have a lot of confidence in the staff. We've had 2 playground reports done. A recreation master plan was done after the playground inventory report was done. I think it's easy to identify 3 playgrounds in this community that need to be replaced. I'd like to see a dollar amount put in the budget for 2020 to replace the first one, and in 2021 do the second one, and 2022 do the third one. And I don't think we need a playground study consulting fee of $20,000 to carry out a playground study. I think the studies are already there, and I think we've got competent staff that can identify which playgrounds need to be replaced in the next 3 years. So I don't know how we handle this, whether it's a motion or show of hands, but I'd like to see that removed. And the other item, we're going to do one at a time, I suppose. And the other one was the police services building. For 27.5, I think Councillor Schreider mentioned it earlier. I agree with her that I see no reason why that item cannot be deferred until such time where we, police service get moved into their own building and do a little further investigation. What kind of rentals might be attracted, or staff moving in there, whatever the case may be. So I think we could defer that one. Those are my 2 recommended changes. I'd like to commend staff on the fine work they did with the budget. I think it's we're doing a whole lot in 2019. For CAO mentioned around 3%. So.
And look at each of those suggestions individually. I just so on the first one, the question of the playground assessment, the money for the consultant to do that work. I would just let's just talk about this in the context of accountability. And I think the previous council, developed a strong desire over the past term to hold the administration accountable for completing the capital plan, and for ensuring that the capital plans that they brought us are achievable. And the administration, via the CAO earlier today, assured us that it is the consensus of the senior administrators that this is an achievable capital budget. My concern with adjusting that piece is that we begin to meddle with the structure that they've put in place, and they're less accountable on that point. If we approve the budget as it stands today, with the consultants that they believe they need to deliver the capital plan, then we can then say, if for some reason the capital plan turns out to be less deliverable than suggested, that we can come back and say, why? You gave us these assurances. We approved it based on those assurances, and it hasn't happened. I have every confidence it will happen. I'm not suggesting to anybody that I don't believe it. I'm only saying that they've brought us this plan. They're standing behind it. They're saying these are the consultants we need. We can deliver this. I think that we should stand behind it with them and approve those consultants that they have asked for. And at the end of the year, we can have a discussion, and hopefully it's been delivered as advertised based on the needs that the administration has identified. So I think that one, I would like us to continue it, go with their plan, and then we can all be accountable for the decisions we've made. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a comment also about the playground equipment plan. Jane, if I'm reading this right, it sounds like what you're and listening to your presentation earlier, your goal is to have an accessible playground similar to the one at Jubilee eventually in Port Elgin. And to me, it would seem that you would need to have some extra expertise to achieve that. And that particular playground was accomplished as a result of a very significant funding partner in the Southampton Rotary. And I would expect we would be getting accessibility grants with this too. And so I would support keeping this in for those reasons. I think not knowing a lot about playground, and certainly as much as the Vice Deputy Mayor, playgrounds, but to me it would seem like those are special considerations to take into account here that would be a valuable investment.
Councillor Schreier.
Thank you. Through you, I agree with the Vice Deputy Mayor on this, and I think I spoke to it when the project was first presented, is that we have capable staff in order to do this work, I feel. And I feel that if we aren't sure exactly what it is that we're looking for with playground replacement, is that we can do a request for proposal, and that ideas can come through, not necessarily a tender project where it's just the lowest price. Then they can bring forward the creativity of different models for us to look at. I do feel that staff are competent in order to carry this out. I think through our inventory that we have, the monthly inspections that staff do now that are certified inspectors, and we have a CSA standard that we adhere to, and it's also captured in our asset management plan, is that those are the types of operational things that we do in order to save money when it comes to consulting. If we can do it in-house, it's great for us. I guess my other point to that would also be that by me not supporting this, it doesn't necessarily mean that I don't feel staff is capable of completing all of the projects that are in front of us. Is there a better way to spend the money, or is there a more efficient way in order to reallocate those funds? Thank you.
Anything further? So we've had this suggestion from the Vice Deputy Mayor that let me just better find it here so I have the right. Of course, this will be the moment when this thing's not going to work. How much money was it? No, I just don't have the right for 20. Oh, there it is. Oh, there's no tax impact either. It's a reserve impact. So anyway, so we have the recommendation that $20,000 being drawn from the Parks Reserve be removed from the budget. The $20,000 being drawn from the Parks Reserve to support playground equipment planning be removed from the budget. So when I ask all in favor, it'll be all in favor of removing it. Understood? All in favor of removing the number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All opposed. That's carried, so that number is removed. So then, and the Vice Deputy Mayor also suggested the police building, which is going to fall under proposed, there it is. So, facilities office reconfiguration. So that's $27,500 from taxation for the reconfiguration of the police office. So I guess I'll ask for other discussion. We've heard from the Vice Deputy Mayor on it. Other members wish to discuss that. Councillor Schreier.
Thank you. Through you, I also agree with the Vice Deputy Mayor on this one as well, is that if we have a future plan for it, or perhaps we're not sure what that future plan is not spend that money now. We can either spend it somewhere else or we do not spend it, but we put money towards that building when we know what its intended purpose is. Thank you.
I think that has to be on the understanding that at some point over the course of the year, as those opportunities become available, we may need to make an unbudgeted expense in favor of this project, and that the administration may be coming to us to look for funding from reserves likely to fund changes to this building. So I just think council should be clear on that and not be surprised if in 5 or 6 months we do get that request for additional funding to support this in light of an opportunity that we don't know is coming as of yet. So just important to bear in mind. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Should that excuse me, should that happen, we'd be getting a presentation from staff about what's happening anyway, so we would have to be making an unscheduled budget adjustment anyways. I think it's a matter of waiting to see what we're going to do. 27,000 can sit and wait, or we can wait and then add to it. My opinion is that we hold on to that, wait till we see what we're going to do with it. Is it going to be part of our staff? Is it going to be tendered out to somebody? If it's going out to somebody else, it's going to require more than $27,000 worth of work. So I will wait for a staff discussion on that.
And I don't disagree with removing it. I just, sometimes councils have a tendency to get testy when things come back unbudgeted. And so it's important for councils to be aware of what they're doing when they're doing them. Are there further questions on this? So all in favor of removing the $27,500 from taxation? That's carried. So that's the items addressed by the Vice Deputy Mayor. I guess I'll move down the table to Councillor Smith. Do you have any comments at this time, Councillor Smith?
I have no further comments at this time.
Councillor Grace, any further comments at this point? Councillor Carr, any questions or comments? Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, and this is going to be directed towards Amanda, I guess, just more maybe a question for my mind to get wrapped around this for the membrane expansion project that you've mentioned here. This might be out of your realm for the question that I'm kind of bouncing around in my own head here. So with this expansion, is that strictly to meet the needs in the summertime, like better peak demands, or is this something that has to be done because of development first, I guess is the first part of my question.
So through Mr. Mayor, it is to accommodate for development. The master plan set out how many modules we need to put in every year, and that's keeping up with what that recommendation is. So as the town grows, new modules go in to meet that need for new. It's not summer, it's based on the average flows.
And I guess a follow-up question with that one too, back at the water again here, so does that change the lifespan of the membranes that are currently there because they'll be filtering less, or is that something that they've got a certain amount of life no matter how much water they process, or?
I don't know a lot about the technical, but I know as the membranes age, then less water can get put through. So what allows more water to get through better is replacing them. So that's that second project that's going on. So as we open up those pore spaces, then more can get through. This will allow more water to be treated for sure by having the expansion and by doing the replacement. Does that answer your question? I can get Aqua to give us a good technical answer back, and I'm more than happy to set something up with you and Dan to
Yeah, I'm just kind of asking that question because in my mind, again, if I was maybe picturing that as more of a peak demand issue, but is it one of those things that we'd benefit at looking at increasing our reservoir capacity as opposed to doing something like that, or are we talking two different things there?
We could increase reservoir capacity to have more water. Having more modules, we would be able to process more water as well. I don't support the idea of increasing the water supply to meet the summer peaks for the 2 weeks in July, just simply because when we do the analysis, all that water is going to lawns. And I don't know that we want to spend the money operational-wise to have the plant at less than half capacity for 9 months of the year so that people can have green lawns in the summer. If that's the direction council wishes, then that is how we would need to start budgeting for that, and we can have that discussion when the financial plan comes back.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Councillor Rich, any comments? Councillor Schreider?
Thank you. Just one project, and I think for Jane. So Southampton Town Hall in 2020, there's $1 million in there for that. Is that for renovations?
Sorry, I didn't go back and look at that one, but that one I suspect has been in there for a number of years and hasn't changed, and that would have been in reference to the report, struggling with the name, that was done about 6-7 years ago. So the Thor-Dingman report, so that would have been a majority of the auditorium and then some references to the main floor where the art school and art gallery is as well.
Okay, so I guess my question was around the master key replacement and the fob system, which I am a supporter of that. I think it is a good program. I guess a few questions just surrounding that, is we do have several facilities that are listed in here. Will it be one software system that does all of them, or will they be individually facilities that have their own software to support?
At this point, we're envisioning that it's going to be one software that's going to support all of the facilities until we get into further discussions with potential contractors. Until we see what our options are, It's difficult for me to answer that question at this point.
And where I was going with this, my final question was just with regards to the Southampton Town Hall has $11,000 in 2019 for a fob key system, but then we have $1 million in the following year for some type of renovation or restructure and stuff like that. I guess my question would be, are we spending $11,000 this year that might not necessarily fit into any of the future models that we have? Do we bump that or carry on? And that's my comments on that project.
So the $1 million would be in there as a placeholder at this point without any specific item to go towards that, and chances are I'm purely predicting here that will be pushed out.
Okay, thank you.
The Deputy Mayor? I'm good, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so we have gone around the table, ended up just about almost exactly where we started financially, and that is good. So I guess where am I? So the next meeting date is to be determined. If necessary, it'll likely be a council meeting, a regularly scheduled council meeting, I assume, where we'll see the combined document. I would just advise that Bruce County has not, as of yet, finalized a number, but is going to be meeting this Thursday to make further progress on its budget discussions. And of course, we still have OMPF hanging out there and not certain exactly where that's going to wind up. So, well, on our end, we're about where we were at the beginning of this meeting, and at the end of last meeting, we're still there are still some variables out there which could greatly affect this budget, and so we have to remain prepared for that. I don't know, do you have any further concluding comments, David?
I'd just like to thank Council for your continuing support, and we appreciate questions and happy to answer them. And as I said at the beginning, we'll get back to you with all of the questions you've asked, both operating and capital, and then we will be presenting, as the Mayor said, at a normal, regular Council meeting, the final budget.
Thank you. And one other comment I would make, as now that we've completed discussing all these projects, is that with our endorsement of these projects at a high level in this budget, once the budget is approved, the administration will begin to work on each of these projects, begin to advance them. This is considered high-level direction from us to begin that work. Our investment will begin. There are, in many of these projects, further cases down the road over the course of the year where we will approve. RFPs will go out, tenders will be let, and those approvals will return to this council for decision making. It's important for us to remember that we have initiated these projects at this time, and that our continued support for them, unless things go off the rails from funding or whatever, is advisable. This is the moment, I guess is what I'm saying, is if you, not just today, but before the budget's completed, if you have any qualms about any of these projects proceeding in the end, the time to deal with it is during the budget process and not at some point later after tendering has been undertaken or some other important step has been undertaken. So as you think about that, as you think about the budget between now and the next time we talk about it, be very confident in these capital projects and be certain that if they come back as budgeted, that you're willing to support them. So with that, I don't think I have any more words of wisdom, so I'll ask, do you have a comment or just a word of motion?
Just one question. My apologies. So I know we're sitting right around that 3, but does Sue have a tentative number, or we just wait and see?
I think you can say the number is exactly where it was at the beginning of the day, 3%. So with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. By the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilor Schreider. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.